Okay, so your eyes tell the story.
Sorry about that. Let me do a quick check. I think everybody is here. So we have a quorum. Let me just. Well, it does look like we have a quorum. Dr. Thomas, are we live and ready to roll?
Yes, we're already live.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to call our meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Dr. Thomas, if you would do roll call for us.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Stevens,
Here.
Ms. Davis,
Here.
Dr. Yeager,
Here.
Dr. Dykeman,
Here.
Mr. Worthy, Mr. Worthy,
Here.
okay, Dr. Gant,
Here.
Dr. Knox,
Here.
and Dr. Maddox.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. We'll move forward with silent meditation at this time. Thank you. Moving forward with our agenda or item number 2, I'm going to open the floor to amend or adopt the agenda as it's before us.
I move that we adopt the agenda as written.
Can I make a motion? We might need to make one amendment to the agenda. I apologize. One of the policies that we approved for public comment last month on July 9th, GBRL, did not make it into the agenda. I just realized that this afternoon. And so it's ready to be approved. We have public comment on it and it's not on the agenda.
Okay. All right. So I hear, well, I heard Mr. Davis's motion, but it didn't get a second. So I did hear you, Dr. Yeager, with the motion to amend the agenda.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I didn't phrase it that way, but yes, that's what I'm asking.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Was that Mr. Stevens or Mr. Davis?
Davis.
Okay, Mr. Davis, with the second, any further discussion?
So this would be 9.7, I believe, GBRL. I don't know whether Angela or whoever can, maybe Lisa can load it up.
9.7 GBRL.
If someone sends me the policy, I can load it, or I can get Angela to load it. But if you send it to me, I'll be happy to load it up.
Is Angela available? She has it in the format.
I will message her.
Thank you.
All right, and so while that is being worked out, any further discussion? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us for the motion to amend the agenda to add item 9.7 GBRL.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Miss Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our agenda has been amended. Now I'm going to open the floor to adopt the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We have the motion by Dr. Yeager, second by Dr. Thomas. Any further questions or discussion? All right, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us, all in favor of our agenda as amended.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Miss Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have our agenda before us. We will move forward with the next item, which is public comment. And excuse me, our first letter, Ms. Palmer,
Yes.
do you mind keeping the time for us?
Sure, I will.
I just realized I didn't ask you to do that earlier, so I apologize.
That's okay. Let me get it on my phone real quick. I'll just let you know when if you don't hear it. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, I'll begin with our first letter writer from Mr. Alvin Sheets. It's greetings in the name of all that is good to the Clark County School Board and staff. From Alvin Sheets, president of the NAACP Unit 5180. A friend of mine from Baja Faith shared a few notes with me, of which I will share with you. I quote, "Whatever immediate results might come from the current demonstrations, the elimination of racism will require a sustained and concerted effort. It is one thing to protest against a particular forms of injustice. It is a far more profound challenge to create a new framework for justice. Our efforts can only succeed when we learn to build relationships with each other based on sincere friendship, regard, and trust, which in turn become pillars for the activities of our institutions and communities." End quote. What steps are you willing to take to make sure that Black and Brown children are not being disproportionately retained, held back a grade? Let's be sure you are not keeping children back who may be special needs and otherwise, who have not had a proper school setting, 6 or 7 months. Please keep in mind that studies show children who repeat their grades are more likely to drop out of school. Are you ready for that which you may be creating or are creating? Yours truly, Alvin Sheets, President, ACP Unit 5180. Our next question is, our next letter is from Ashley Na. It reads, Dear Board of Education, tonight I am putting my many other concerns aside to speak about childcare and internet for our students. I've heard from Kelly Gertz that ACC is working with CCSD to help with childcare needs, and I'm excited to hear that. I am just wondering what else is being done to support parents. What I am asking for is transparency around childcare support so people with resources they may have to offer, including ideas and visions, can contribute to the process, and so parents and guardians can have a clear understanding of what their year will look like. There are already a number of volunteers that have offered childcare that could be connected to families in need. Additionally, I want to ask for transparency on the issue of internet access. I know that we have 8 hotspots so far that will travel to different communities in the district, but after compiling a list of low-income neighborhoods in the county, I see at least 37 low-income neighborhoods if my research is correct. With that being said, if the hotspots don't reach more than one community, we should have at least 37 hotspots at our starting point. While knowing those buses are not able to stay all day, I think it would make more sense to provide high-speed in-home internet access for students. We need to remember that the home has become the classroom, and under the rights of a free and appropriate public education, the classrooms need to be equitable so the education can be accessible. Internet is a clear place to start. I know funding is an issue, and I'm willing to figure out different ways or look for more grants to help us in this journey. We know many of our students have been parentified and have other responsibilities in the house, especially during this time. Access to in-home internet would allow for asynchronous work to be done whenever there is time. I remember seeing some data on internet access for our district students, and I am hoping that live results for needs surveys from schools and the district be made available as parents fill them out. As a teacher, I am here for the children. As a community member, I am also here for the children. If I don't know what our kids need and our community doesn't know what our community needs, there is no way for us to aid you all and the district in helping them meet those needs. While I write this letter in fear of punishment from the district, I hope you make the right decision moving forward in protecting teacher freedom of speech, along with your own freedoms as Board of Education elected officials. Thank you. Ashley Na, pronouns she, hers, Clark Middle School, grade 7, life science. Our next letter is from Brian Davis, and it reads, I am very concerned about the upcoming vote on policy 8.11, addressing staff rights and responsibilities that will limit teachers' ability to directly contact members of the school board with questions and concerns. Any move by the administration to limit or restrict accountability and transparency should be strongly discouraged. Our district is in a major period of upheaval, and the public should have a clear picture of what is going on. As the school board consists of the only elected officials in CCSD, it is imperative that they be made aware of what is going on at the ground level. History does not smile kindly on any administration that stifles the voices of its workers. Our next letter is from Dr. Diane Dunston, and it reads to CCSD Board of Education from Diane E. Dunston, MD, regarding concerns for the education of children in the CCSD. Thank you, Dr. Gann, and all members of the Board of Education who participated in the meeting with the NAACP to discuss some of the community concerns regarding the accreditation of and education provided by the school district. At this time of social unrest, political upheaval, on top of a public health crisis in our nation, I am certain that the children in the Clark County School District who were on the margins before March of 2020 are teetering on the edge. I have concerns after our conversation that the Board of Education has not taken seriously the unethical actions by members of the board, which have resulted in a precarious situation for the children and families who are striving to receive a quality public education in Athens, Clark County. We understand that to break the bondage of servitude, a key component rests in providing a solid education for our children. In Dr. Means, the district had a leader that believed in and valued all the children in the district. Some of the exodus of teachers and administrators from the district when Dr. Means was at the helm resulted from their refusal to give the masses of the children of color, most especially the Black children, an equal opportunity to gain excellence in education. The disrespect of Dr. Means and the disregard for his authority as superintendent further validates the racist motives by some board members, which impeded the governing role of the entire board. I am still dismayed that a member of the school board can hurl racist epithets at an African-American audience and be justified in doing so. For these and many other reasons, I want to be on record on behalf of the children in the Clark County School District to state that these actions by members of the school board are unacceptable. The district is in jeopardy of losing its accreditation as a result. I urge this board to take seriously the actions that led to this outcome and to address with expediency the issues that have put the district in this uncertain situation. Respectfully, Diane E. Dunson, MD, Fellow of the American Academy. Our next letter is to the Clark County Board of Education. It is from Dr. Frankie Hill, Executive Director for Programs of Feed My Sheep. Good evening. I would like to begin by thanking Dr. Lakeisha Gant, BOE President, for working with Alvin Sheets and Maurice Daniels and making the community meeting a reality. Last count, 76 people participated virtually and 666 viewed by YouTube for a total of 742. This speaks volumes as to whether this community is interested in the board's decision making and the threat of losing the district's accreditation. It is a tragedy that this board cannot put aside its hatred for Damon Means and work with him in addressing the very clear directives given by Cognia in the April 24th, 2020 report. It was obvious and concerning to many of us that it appeared that board representatives were not well versed in the contents of the report. Additionally, the responses from the board representatives generated more questions than answers. This board appears to believe that Cognia will be fine, accepting that they are beginning to make progress instead of demonstrating that the violations have been corrected. What we know as a community is that you, the board, have until December 2020 to address these directives, and August is almost gone. The apathy that is being displayed in eradicating the Cognia findings is not acceptable. As a community, we would like to know what the plan is for saving the district's accreditation. Our students should not have to suffer because 5 people on this board were implementing individual and special interests. My next area of concern is CCSD schools compiling lists to retain students who have not had in-person teaching since February 2020. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, academic resources have been limited. Teachers and parents struggled to deliver quality instruction driven by state standards. Schools closed early, and there was no summer school. Yet some schools are prepared to deliver the ultimate punitive consequence, retention. Retaining these students who have not been in school for months is unjust. This board needs to give immediate consideration to revisiting its policy for retention with some expediency. Why? Because the students that will be damaged are the Black and Brown 74% of students. Retaining these students displays lack of compassion and equity for all. Instead of spending time and resources on retention, why isn't this energy and resources being spent on helping them augment their academic process? I look forward to you as a board discussing this relevant concern. Dr. Frankie Hill. And our last letter, according to my records, is from Chris Woodward, and it reads, I am thankful for the work of our board and for district leadership. Since pre-planning, I have been unable to spend much time on social media. By the end of the day, I'm tired of looking at a screen. As a teacher, I'm an advocate for one-to-one technology and have always integrated digital tools into my classroom instruction. A couple weeks into pre-planning, after a multitude of Zoom calls and digital documents, I am worried about so many students who we know we will leave behind. I worry that we are willing away an opportunity for fundamental reform, choosing to solidify rather than deconstruct systems that fail so many of our kids. I'm concerned that we are kicking the can down the road, building in failed states we can almost see just around the corner. As a parent and an educator, I wish that we were building in more creativity and flexibility into our plan. As mentioned, after a day of online work, I find that I have little inclination or motivation to visit social media, which is a shame because it is encouraging to see how parents and teachers are using their voices to push the needs of children. With that said, having dipped my toe in the social media waters here and there lately, I am disappointed by the nature of some of the dialogue. I don't believe pulling down others ever elevates your own point. Further, personal attacks against folks you disagree with does little to increase the receptivity and openness of decision makers. I don't wish to judge or police the tone of voices being used online. I value the perspective and passion. I simply believe strongly in the power of empathy and perspective taking. These are not simply concepts I teach. Likewise, as I wrote when I began this letter, I'm thankful for the work of the district staff, even as I find myself concerned with some decisions. I respect their commitment and note their dedication, even as I gather concerns about some outcomes of their work. I am worried about class sizes and concerned that class size is data being described in averages, which can obscure actual numbers rather than max class sizes per school per grade level. I am concerned by the rigidness assumptions made about full-day digital schedules. I am concerned about the messages from some principals telling teachers not to use their voice to cast dissent, not to advocate for children despite their experience. I am deeply concerned that there is no visible move by the district to end this practice. Instead, there seems to be a top-down repetition on chain of command. I hope we can get to a point where when we disagree with passion and focus without ignoring the need for humanity and compassion in our dialogue. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't hear those voices who are too deeply injured or fearful. It is simply a call to expect better of ourselves, of our district, and of the opportunities granted for all children. Thanks, Chris Woodward. Ms. Palmer, according to my records, those are all of the letters that I have.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. We will move forward with our agenda, and next on our agenda, I'm sorry, my screen is moving around here. Next on our agenda is my report. Give me 1 second here.
I have committee reports as the next.
I'm sorry. My screen is moving around on me. Thank you. Was that Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Our Board of Education committee reports. And we'll start with the Finance Committee.
Yes, Finance Committee, I spoke with Mr. Byron Schuman on yesterday. Mr. Byron Schuman is our new Chief Financial Officer. As you know, that Mr. Griner resigned as of July the 31st. Excuse me. But anyway, we talked about the finance meeting, but he said that closing out the records for fiscal year 2000, it takes time. So therefore, we're looking at having the next finance meeting in September for the month of June. So we'll be sending out a notice to all of the Finance Committee members and also all board members when that meeting would take place.
Okay. Thank you. Government Relations Committee.
Very good. Muted.
Mr. Davis, are you there? You're showing up as muted on my end, Mr. Davis.
I am very sorry. I'm getting ready for a thunderstorm. I'm being semi outside. Yes, what was your, I'm sorry, Madam President, what was your question?
That's okay. You were showing up as muted on my end. We are at the Government Relations report.
Okay,
Committee report. And so if you could just give us a brief overview.
sure. We do have a Government Relations Committee meeting next Thursday at 4:30 to make preparations for our joint meeting with the County Commission and the school board, and also Athens Housing Authority on the 24th. And our committee meetings at 4:30 on Tuesday, and at 7 o'clock is our meeting with the Housing Authority and the county and the school board. The only thing on the agenda is the ongoing pandemic and what the county, the Housing Authority can do to assist our students and our parents to both expand their needs for broadband and also to put in, look at other challenges that our families face and concerning evictions and food and that type of thing. So it's going to be a two-part agenda. The meeting will only last an hour and a half. But anyway, we certainly welcome the public to Zoom in on both those meetings.
Okay. Thank you very much. Policy Committee report.
Thank you, Dr. Gant. So I was asked to discuss the overall arch of the policy committee at this point. As you recall, we got the Cognia report in late March. I think I've spoken about this before, but in April, Don Myers, who was the previous district staff working with policy committee, prepared a document that listed all of the policies that we have in place and the date. So sorry, back up. The Cognia report's standard 1.4 directive was to revise the policy manual to ensure that all the system policies are current and adhere to state law when applicable. So that was at the top of the list of things that the policy committee has been trying to work on making sure all of our policies are accurate. So in April, as I said, Don Myers prepared this document. It listed 388 policies. 66 were more than 20 years old or had not been reviewed in 20 years. 60 were more than 10 years old. And the rest, 100 others, were more than 5 years old since they have been reviewed. So we have kicked into high gear to try to address this problem. These policies should not be so old. They should have been reviewed more frequently. So we're kicked into high gear with now Mr. Lawrence Harris. We have formed a number of committees to work on these different groups of policies. The first group of policies that we tackled starting in May was the G policies. And we did that because we were told by Dr. Myers that she thought that the human resources team was going to have more time in May and June to help us with these policies than they might later in the year. So we hit those first. There was no intent other than just to make it more convenient to get through those policies as quickly as possible. And so in the past 2 months, we have tackled 26 personnel related policies in the G policies. We're going to finish those up today, hopefully. I believe there's one left that we haven't gotten to that we'll address next month. So in terms of the concerns that I've been hearing from a lot of people about how we're targeting personnel in this time of COVID and stress, I just want everyone to know that this process has been going on since April and May. And there was no intent at all to coincide the work with these policies with any activities by our staff during the summer. So just to tell you, we have 6 different subcommittees that all have deadlines to work on individual policies. We have the instructions committee. For example, I'm on the operations committee, and each committee has a member of the staff. So in my case, operations, Mr. Fisher and I are working together, and we have asked for the help of some of the members elect. So we have 1 member elect who's going to be working with us, a team of 3 to work through different groups of policies. I can write these up and put them in a document if everybody wants to see. I believe I shared an email with the board, but if the public is interested in the formation of these committees, I'm happy to make those public. So we are moving on these policies. In addition to that, we have policy training as a full board next week with a member of the GSBA policy staff, Angela Palm. So we'll all learn more about the policy process. We're having twice as many policy meetings every month as normal. We're meeting at least twice a month and sometimes more to get these policies through the system. Specific policies to be addressed that were listed in the Cognia report are moving up to the front for this next meeting. You'll see some policies. I can tell you which ones they're going to be if you're interested. For this coming month's policy discussion are the ones that were actually cited in the report as needing review, in addition to the older ones. Okay, the next policy meeting will be August 20th, and the discussion, the other thing, at the work session, just let me say this last one thing. There was some discussion about regulations versus policy and whether the board should be involved in approving regulations. And I asked at the time a week ago to put off that discussion until we get our policy training, first of all, which is next week. And second of all, until we can have a discussion about this. Mr. Harris and I have promised ourselves to look through these 388 policies and tease apart which ones have a reg and which ones, pull out the ones that have a reg and look at the reg to make sure that it doesn't have policy language in it. So that's going to be part of the review between now and December, is to see and make sure that all of what's in the regulations, is appropriate. And then I'm happy once that's done to then say, we don't need to be approving regulations anymore. That's best practices for us not to be approving regulations. But we'll have a conversation if people can make it on August 27th. And then hopefully be able to make a decision later in the year about this, changing this part of the reg or part of the policy. Okay, I think that's done, except that I just wanted to say we have several policies that have been in public comment that will be moving forward. We discussed them last week. We have a few more public comments I can describe, and then putting up a few more for the month of review. That's the end of my report, unless there's any questions.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have not received that plan that shows the committees, the 6 committees that you described and the people that are on those committees, especially the board members elect. And I myself have not been appointed to a committee. So could you please get that to me and maybe?
Well, so you would not have been appointed, Linda. It's 1 member from policy committee, 1 member elect, and 1 member of staff on each of the 6 committees. But I'm happy to send you that list, or I can read it to you right now if you care to.
Yeah, if you'll just send it to me, I'd like to see the plan so that I can see how we're going to come to the end. I think the whole board would like to see it.
Yes.
Sure. So for example, instruction has 32 policies that need to be reviewed. Mr. Gaskin is the staff member. Mr. Davis is the policy committee member, and Ms. Anderson, or Dr. Anderson, excuse me, is the member elect. And the 3 of them are working on those policies, and they're hoping to have them to us for approval or for moving forward in November, for example.
So this is a policy committee project is what you're saying, not a
Yes, ma'am.
board project.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
And all of these will be worked through the subcommittees. They'll go through the policy committee as usual. and be approved to move up to the board, and then the board will have free reign on them, hopefully an efficient free reign if we can get these all done by December.
That would be great. But again, because it's a part of the Cognia response, I would be very interested in seeing that plan articulated.
Certainly. I think maybe, Dr. Gant, may I make this as a formal report and put it up on board docs so the public can see it as well? I don't
Sure.
have it right
That-
now.
Actually,
but
that would probably be best. Yep.
I will do that. So it'll be in board docs shortly. Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yes, not a question, but a comment. I'm agreeing with Linda. Anything pertaining to these directives from Cognia and Dr. Yeager, you gave a good report there, but the entire board should be notified in terms of what's taking place
Yes.
with all of that.
Well, they have been notified. I've mentioned this before. I have to go back in my notes and see which meeting. I've mentioned this at a board meeting before, that we were going to do these subcommittees with the members elect. I believe you all gave me that approval, but.
Well, I don't recall, but anyway, if you send it in emails, then I know for sure that we'll have that. But my point is that everything that has taken place with correcting these directives from Cognia, the entire board should be involved in that, because if they're going to do a check in November, they also coming in December, and I'm thinking that they are observing these board meetings, and I don't want to look foolish. A question is asked to me like what you gave a few minutes ago, and I don't have any knowledge of it.
Well, I'm sorry, sir. I'm absolutely certain that I have presented this to you before, and I believe I sent an email, but I will double check on that. And there is no intention of keeping this from you. We will bring it through the policy committee and then on up to the board as all of our policies are reviewed. And some of them will just be reviewed because they're fine, but they'll have a new date stamp on them. They won't be 1982 like some of the ones that are up there right now. So
no, I'm not questioning whether you said it before. It's just that I don't recall that, because there's so much said at board meetings. But if you put it in the email, I know that we would have it.
All right, I'll find that email and resend it to you, Mr. Worthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got another comment,
Yes.
Madam President.
Okay.
I think, Mr. Worthy, that, with the whole, you may be proposing that the entire board fold itself into the policy committee then, because the work that we started out to do following the Cognia report, once it was issued, and they pointed out the fact that our policies were had not been updated, then that became automatically the policy committee. Now, are you suggesting that perhaps the entire board should begin to attend policy meetings, which of course any board member can attend, but
that's correct.
But again, we have another policy that says that the policy committee is a committee and not a meeting of the entire board. So are you proposing a policy change at this point, or of some sort?
No, I'm not proposing that at all. I said that anything pertaining to the cognitive directives in that cognitive report, board members should be updated on it. I'm not proposing that, Mr. Davis. You have it all wrong. I'm not saying that at all. But the entire board should be involved in whatever is going on in terms of addressing those directives.
Then that would be every policy meeting is involved in the.
No, Greg.
No, you got it. No.
No, I think, so what, if I wasn't clear, I apologize. These 200 policies need to be looked at by a staff member and a policy committee member, at least one of us. And they need to make a recommendation to the larger policy committee. What do we need to do with this policy? Could we just review it and send it on up? And all of these are going to come through the full board, hopefully before December. so that we can get done what we need to get done. But it's 200 policies, and our track record is maybe 4 or 5 a month. So we can't keep doing what we're doing. We've got to accelerate. And the only way I could figure out how to accelerate was to engage the assistance of our 3 members elect to put some extra eyes on this. Plus, it's a heavy load on our staff at a time when they're handling a whole lot of other stuff going on. Getting Mr. Gaskin's attention to look at 32 policies is a big ask for him right now, as it is for any of the staff members who are very busy. So we're trying to make this as efficient as possible, putting most of the labor on the board and the board members elect, and then getting as much help as we can from the staff. Because for me to address a finance committee policy or a finance policy doesn't make any sense. We need Mr. Greiner or Mr. Schooneman to help us. John has a question.
Yes, we have a question in chat. And so are all of the members elect already on one of these subcommittees?
Yes.
Okay, because Nicole Hull had a question about whether the question was, should the board member elects wait on the board members to reach out?
Well, so I can check back with Nicole and make sure she got the email from Mr. Harris inviting her to be on a particular committee. It sounds like maybe she didn't get that email, so I'll double check with her. All of these subcommittees at the moment are waiting for the staff member to find the time to look at the 20 to 30 policies, or at least to schedule a meeting. I know Mr. Harris has just scheduled a meeting for them to all go through them together. Different staff members will probably do it differently. Excuse me. But yeah, Ms. Hull, I will definitely reach out to you and make sure you got that email.
Yeah, I'll follow up if that's okay. It sounds like you need all the hands you can get. I'm happy to help, Tish, if you need additional labor on that, even though I'm not on the committee since I
That
was
would be
chair
awesome.
last year.
Your
Okay.
experience from last year would be very well appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Well, I
you.
have about 6 years experience on the policy committee, and I'm certainly available to help as well. Again, I just had no idea that it was going on. So this is like a screening to kind of get you down to the ones that need some real attention.
Yes.
Again, had no knowledge. I apologize for that if I missed an email somewhere.
Well, you were at the last policy meeting, I believe, Ms. Davis, weren't you?
Yeah, those words didn't mean this to me. I thought we were talking about just the policy committee. I didn't know that we were talking about other people. So I just didn't interpret it, or I would have asked the question then.
All right, thank you very much. Moving forward, property committee.
Yes, the property committee, we met this past Tuesday, August the 11th. However, that meeting was held in executive session, and can't reveal anything that was discussed in executive session. But I know that we're going to be having another meeting sometime here in the near future. And I know that the superintendent, Dr. Thomas, is going to be gathering some information to bring back to that meeting, and also Mr. John Gilbert and Mr. Dexter Fisher. And when all of that happened, if we can get to a point where something can be shared with the public in that next meeting, we would do so. That's the property committee report.
Okay. Thank you for those reports. Moving forward with our board community reports, we'll start with the Athens Area Community Foundation.
Hello, we will be meeting on August the 24th, so I should have a report next month.
Okay. Thank you. Community Oversight Committee, SPLOST report.
Yes, I had the opportunity to attend the COC meeting this week. Just quickly, the Hillsman, there's a final walkthrough that's being planned for this week, I believe. The locker rooms at Cedar Shoals these are the athletic locker rooms. They are now in use. The manufacturing lab is they're working on the floors as we speak. Thanks to ABA, one of our local companies that has volunteered to work. We have also, and I think some of the board members have seen some emails back and forth about this, but we are still working on the athletic field and stadium of both high schools. There was an issue of a storm pipe that had been put in a number of years ago that needed repair. But it does not call for any change of order or any vote of the board to pay for that work. At Cedar Shoals, and we're also, obviously still working on the 6-lane track there. And at Cedar Shoals, they're working on the track there as well. There are some athletic contests that are coming up. I hate to give dates, but I do have one in late August and one in early October and one in early September that are scheduled. So the facilities department is working very quickly to make sure that the spaces are available for those events. There was also talk about Prince Avenue property that we are currently leasing with the hope to own, lease to own. And the expectation is that around December and January, there will be RFPs put out for the necessary renovations that will need to take place so that our district offices can begin the process of moving in. The Clark Middle School, there was a survey taken as to the plans for the building, the status of the current building, and we've begun the process of kind of assessing what the needs are for Clark Middle School. There sometime before the end of the year, we should have besides working with the local school governance team, which is being done by the end of the year, we should have a local building committee also in place. And there was some good discussion talking about how do you survey feeder schools and what types of questions would be relevant for parents who may have not seen the inside of a school, and yet are being asked to kind of weigh in as to the condition of the building. So we had a good discussion on how do you do surveys prior to plans for construction. There was talk about West Broad, and again, by the end of the year, there should be, or I would say within the next month, if I'm not overstating, there should be a building committee established for that property, and there are a number of decisions that will need to be made. And we talked about, we have 5 new buses, 3 or 4 of which are now propane, and they are in place, and we'll see if that will be a cost savings both to the environment and to the school district by switching to propane. And SPLOST dollars. Oh, also we have more hotspots that are in place, and very happy about that. It's coming out of SPLOST money for our students and families to be able to access broadband. And finally, the SPLOST dollars are miraculously up, even up from last June. So go figure. But anyway, it was a very productive meeting, and we have a very active committee, and thank you. It's the end of my report.
Okay. Thank you. Was there a question? Does someone have their hand up for any questions around the community oversights?
I do. I heard a big mixture of SPLOST and facilities there. So I think I heard that last line which said that the revenue was up for SPLOST, so we did not see any decrease in revenue as a result of the current pandemic experience?
That's my understanding. And I
Thank you.
don't, it's a miracle to me, but I mean, I take miracles.
And I'm wondering, since there were so many items on this SPLOST report, is that written somewhere that we can get a SPLOST report, or is that operations and district can provide that to us?
To be honest with you, I mean, what we get is an agenda, and I don't know. Traditionally, we haven't designated. Oh, there's Patricia. She knows the answer.
She sent it to us.
We have minutes. And actually, since I accidentally or not purposefully missed the meeting the other day, I asked for the minutes, and yeah, I have the minutes. I can share those with you.
Dr. Yeager?
I did receive the minutes, and so that's why I was wondering, in this report, is this something that we can just post so that the community can see it as well? Because that was an awful lot to digest in a few minutes.
Well, I believe the minutes for the COC meetings are on the district website under the COC website. So they're posted publicly on the website already.
That's great. Thank you.
Dr. Yeager?
Yeah.
I do recall you sending that information on the last two SPLOST reports.
Yeah.
And it was good. In fact, both of them were almost identical. As I could recall, $2 million. So you sent that from the COC report. You sent that to us in an email.
I did, yes.
Thank you.
We get updated. So Mr. Gerald R. Scott, I believe he was there this morning, Greg, or at the meeting this week. He's the one who's the financial person for the COC, and he's the one who sends the reports as soon as he gets them. He's the office and budget manager for the SPLOST. So he provided that report to us. He gets it to us a little bit earlier than the meeting. He always presents it at the meeting, but this year, of course, we're all very anxious to hear it sooner than as soon as we possibly can get it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Envision Athens.
So I've shared with you all of the notes that I've had and the upcoming events for Envision Athens. They have, we now have an intern, and so that intern has been doing minutes from the different initiatives. So I've gotten the minutes from Safe Athens. There's an implication for our district, an opportunity for our district to work more closely with other community-wide efforts around a safe Athens. And so I'm hoping that Dr. Rourke is already engaged with that. If not, I will forward those minutes to the board so that if it's something that you want to plug into, I think it's very informative to see what is happening around the county on the Safe Athens initiatives. And there are two others that I have participated in that I can also share those minutes with you as well. The good news is collaboration is definitely happening among those providers and those people that are seeking to actually reach into our school district. And so I feel like we'll be getting more and more support from our community going forward. That's my report.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Are there any questions? Okay. Foundation for Excellence.
Yes, that was me, but since the Foundation for Excellence revised their bylaws, the contact person, as I understand it, would be the superintendent or designee who are ex officio non-voting members of that board.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. And I can consult with FFE regarding that, Dr. Knox. Thank you for that information.
Thank you.
Georgia School Boards, that would be me. I don't have any report or new information for you at this time. Okay. Moving forward to the President's report, there are a few things. One are our student recognitions. We didn't want to try to change the agenda, but there are a couple of student recognitions that Dr. Thomas has requested to place here because of the order of the things that we'll be discussing. And I also want to publicly say thank you to Dr. Thomas and her staff. I think Dr. Hill, as well as our ASL interpreters, for providing access for our community. Then I'll go over a couple of reminders. And then lastly, Dr. Thomas and I will give an overview, a presentation, really an update of where we are with Cognia. So Dr. Thomas, I'm gonna sort of turn it over to you quickly to recognize our students.
Thank you. And I will be very quick. I give my apologies to our students and staff and parents. Thank you for your patience. We generally have recognitions at the beginning, but this one was added and I did not want to wait to recognize our students. Those students and or their families are on our Zoom, so you should be able to see them. On Monday, July 27th, 3 current Clark Central High School students and 1 recent graduate were wading in the Oconee River when a rush of water overtook them. 3 of these young men, Jacoby Jones, Parker Sims, a former CCSD student and graduate, and Brody Grace, surfaced, but their other friend did not. After a few minutes, their friend's body was seen face down in the water. The students pulled his body to the shoreline where Jacoby and Parker began administering CPR while Brody called for an ambulance. Paramedics arrived and took him to Piedmont Athens Regional Hospital, where fortunately he later recovered. In short, Jacoby, Brody, and Parker saved their friend's life. When asked how they knew to perform CPR, Jacoby credited his time in Sergeant Holman's JROTC course. All of these young men have participated in JROTC and learned a life-saving skill in this class. First Sergeant Antoine Clark, Sergeant First Class Donald Holman, Sergeant First Lorinda Harris. She was a former JROTC instructor and now works for our transportation department. And the leader, Lieutenant Colonel David McMickle, worked tirelessly to ensure that these students have leadership and not only life skills, but life-saving skills. Their friend's father, along with JROTC instructors, wanted to publicly recognize Jacoby, Parker, and Brody, as well as credit Clark Central's JROTC program for preparing these young men to handle such a horrific situation. There was also a video of this event or on their efforts on Fox 5 News. So we just wanted, as a school family, a district family, to say thank you. We appreciate your efforts as students, and we truly appreciate our JROTC program for the work that they do with our young men and young ladies. So thank you, Dr. Gant, for allowing us to add that. Thank you, students. We're very proud of you and appreciative of you. Thank you to our instructors. Dr. Huff is on with us tonight, and we greatly appreciate all of you. And thank you for your patience. I was texting with them to say, we're coming. And they said, oh, we have patience. And I guess that comes with the job as well. So we greatly appreciate you and are very proud. And when we say we're better together with CCSD, I know your friend knows that he's better because you were together with him there. So thank you. And you all can log off of our Zoom now. We appreciate your patience. And thank you, Dr. Gant, for allowing me this opportunity.
Dr. Thomas, I have a question. I know when we were meeting in HTL, we were giving students a printed certificate.
Yes, sir.
In terms of their accomplishments and other items. Are we still doing that since we're doing this through Zoom? Because I feel like what those students did and saved a life, I don't know, I feel like we need to give them more than a certificate, but whatever we can give, I just wanted to voice that.
Yes, sir. I already had note to reach out to Miss Beth Moore and ask her to send that to them via mail. And I will step over for your donor check after board meeting this evening, and we will get that to them as well, Ms. Stewart.
Please do so. No. Okay.
We will make sure that we do something for these young men on behalf of the Clark County School District, because this was truly a life-saving event. And had they not been there, Colonel said things would have looked drastically different. So we are very appreciative, and we will make sure something is done beyond this virtual recognition. Thank you,
All
Mrs.
right.
Worthy.
Sure.
What?
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, and thank you to our students, as well as
Can I say something?
Colonel, for your actions. Awesome to hear about our programs, and we have some strong JROTC programs here. I will provide a couple of brief updates
I'll give you a chance to speak on
to
it.
our presentation.
You wanted to, didn't you? Sorry.
The very first thing is just please be on the lookout for our code of ethics as well as our professional development plan to sign. If you have not sent the evaluation from the parliamentary procedures trainings, please don't forget to send that to me. Don't forget to stop by and sign the executive session records. Reach out to Ms. Palmer about your availability to stop by and sign the executive session records, as well as our training attendance sheet. So I am going to add that if you don't mind, Ms. Palmer and Dr. Thomas. Also a reminder that for our committees to be sure to send any notes or summaries that you have, so that towards the beginning of our board meetings, those summaries are quick. But again, if you have any written documents that you could send, that would be very helpful, and we can have them uploaded into board docs. A reminder that we have 2 professional development sessions this month. Actually I put 19th, but it's the 18th. So that's an error in the notes there. It's August 18th and August 27th. And those are our policy trainings and then our self-assessment that has been rescheduled. As it relates to our norms, I'm waiting for feedback from GSBA about our norms, the norms that we have so far. And once I hear back, I'll share with you what I've heard. Okay.
Hey, Lakeisha.
Yes.
There's something in the chat. Casey wanted to say something on behalf of the boys in JROTC.
Okay.
There we go. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Now, I know those 3 boys, and the one boy that they saved, he happens to be my son. And basically, I just want to give a big shout out to the JROTC program as a whole. You know, Colonel and first sergeants, you know, they are teaching these boys how to become men. And you know, I can't be more thankful for the curriculum that the ROTC program has instilled in these young men. So, you know, those boys will forever be in my debt of gratitude. And, you know, I just figured they needed a shout out.
Thank you so much for recognizing the importance of our program, our JROTC programs, as well as the actions of our JROTC students.
Yes, ma'am. And, you know, and that's not just the boys that happen to be there with my son. That's the entire JROTC program. You know, that program teaches the young men and women today how to become leaders in the community. And it's a fantastic organization, a fantastic program. I myself was part of it in high school, you know, and it made me out to be the man I've become today.
Thank you very much.
So it's definitely something to be interested in.
Thank you very much. Moving forward, we will, the last part of the president's report is an update regarding our Cognia report. And I am going to, Ms. Palmer, am I able to,
You can share your screen if you want to. Do Do you want to share it or do you want me to?
I do. I was just looking for it here. This will stop other screen sharing. So is that okay?
That's perfectly fine, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And Dr. Thomas, I'm assuming you have it up on your screen as well. So this is basically an update of where we are as it relates to the Cognia report. And Dr. Thomas and I have talked, so she's going to be speaking on some things, particularly the parts of the report that address operations and those processes. And I'll speak on those that address the governing team. So as you recall, and a lot of this was taken from the Cognia report itself, but Cognia can conduct a variety of different reviews, from the engagement reviews, special reviews, and monitoring reviews. What we have coming up in the future is considered a monitoring review. Those are typically done as needed and prescribed, and it was prescribed as a result of our report. The initial visit was a special review, and those are the reviews that typically come as a result of a complaint. And Dr. Thomas, I can no longer see you on my screen, so please be sure to jump in.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
The purpose of the monitoring review, as I mentioned, for Clark County School District will focus on progress towards addressing the improvement priorities from the special review from January. It's important to emphasize the word progress, and that has been something that has been shared with us. We've spoken with the Cognia representatives that they would like to see progress in all of the areas. They have also encouraged us to prioritize the areas. And so we'll look at that when we look at the report. But, oh, go ahead, Dr. Thomas.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and I know progress is something we've received a good bit of feedback on, and we want our constituents to know that we're not taking the opportunity for progress as a way to do minimal work, but that we are working aggressively on the directives. But as you were just saying, we have to prioritize those. And so even if there's some that we are able to complete, which is definitely a goal, to have things that can be checked off as completed when Cognia returns, but there will be others that we won't leave as totally unresolved, but we will be also making effort toward improvement in those.
Thank you, that's right. So a part of the monitoring review, a part of the report, as we've all looked through it, are the narrative key findings. That's a significant part of the report. And those are really drawn from the information, the interviews, the viewing of our board meetings, the improvement priorities, the directives, and recommendations. I will say here, and Dr. Thomas, remind me if I'm leaving something out, but as we look at the report, when we prioritize what steps we need to be taking, directives are a higher priority than recommendations.
Yes.
All of it is priority, but we should definitely be making progress on the directives. Those are not optional.
That is correct. And the recommendations you will see are areas where we were meeting expectations, but recommendations were ways to become better than even where you are. But the directives are areas that must be improved upon.
This is just, and really a what's to come. So this monitoring review that's going to take place, again, the focus is on progress. They are going to be looking at the different standards that are there. And those are listed here, but governing policies, for example, and they're going to be looking at how any of our actions align with progress in these particular standards. Okay. And so what our goal, of course, is to be able to show improvement. And we're going to talk about improvement from what, but improvement across those ratings. So when we talk about the monitoring review, them actually having the standards as a framework, right, as a guiding tool to assess how we're doing, these are the ratings. These are the ratings they will be using then, and these are the ratings that they used when they came for the special review. And so if you recall, and we're going to go through each standard, there were 5 standards from the report where there were some actions recommended, but each standard was given a rating. And there was 1 insufficient rating, 2 initiating, and 2 improving. So ideally, we would see improvement going from insufficient to ideally improving. But there has to be some improvement. When there is no improvement, that is where concern we should be. So if you go back and look at the report, there were a total of about 16 actions that needed to be taken. 12 of those were directives. In other words, there are 12 things that are priority. And the 4 recommendations are priority as well. But again, the directives are not optional. As I mentioned, there were 5 different ratings for those 5 different standards that were discussed in our report. 1 was insufficient, 2 were initiating, 2 were improving, and we're going to go inside of each standard to see. And then we also put here, although these were not directives, if you look at, I think it's page 10 of the report, is towards the end of the report, were insights. And these are critically important because these are basically a conceptualization of what the dynamics are and what are some of the underlying themes that have caused challenges. And so those insights, those 4 insights that are listed have to do with efficiency of our board meetings, lack of trust among board members, as well as the previous superintendent, adherence to our code of ethics, as well as training to help in that area, and then routine policy review. And it is my belief that we are beginning to make progress in these areas. We still have work to do. So please hear that as well. I'm going to pause. Dr. Thomas, have I missed something?
No, ma'am. I think you've covered it all so far. I'm checking off of 2 laptops, making sure I'm on top of it all, watching 2 screens.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to go into this first document. And this is the document that Dr. Thomas and her staff so kindly put together for us. And basically it pulls all of the core pieces of the report. This second link is simply a link to the Cognia report and information, and that's found on our website as well. But all right, so if you take a look at this, this document here, and we'll start with the standards. As I mentioned, there were 5 standards. 3 of those standards were directly related to governance and leadership. 2 of the standards were a bit more related to operations and those processes. So if you take a look under standard number 1, which is the governing authority establishes and ensures adherence to policies that are designed to support system effectiveness. That is the standard for all of the directives that we have. And under each directive here, we have the rating. And so under standard 1.4, we were initiating. And then what Dr. Thomas and her staff has done is not just provided what's in the report, but also like the categories. So what does this have implications for? So each directive, you have a column that says the category. So for instance, revising the policy manual to ensure that all system policies are current and adhere to state law when applicable. That has implication for policy. And Dr. Yeager is going to give us another brief overview. She's already talked a good bit about it. But she's going to give us just another brief overview of the process that she and Mr. Harris and Dr. Thomas have initiated to address this area a little bit later. But you can see for each directive, we share where we are. Okay, so in many of these areas, so if we go back and take a look at the second directive, the regular professional learning sessions, that has implications for professional learning. That means we need to make changes to our professional learning as well as policy. And then so on, board members receiving trainings on proper board participation with an emphasis on Robert's Rules of Order. That's professional learning. And then also in that last column, at least that's in my view, you can see whether it's in progress. And so that first directive is in progress. The second directive related to professional learning sessions is in progress. And then, let's see if I can move this over. The next directive related to, I'm having to move my screen over. The next directive regarding conducting a self-assessment twice a year, that has been scheduled. We would have had that as complete because that is something that really is something that you do. But that is scheduled for the end of this month. And establishing a means to routinely gather data. There are 2 directives out of the entire report that we still are engaging in some follow-up on. And this is one of them. And so we will be coming back to the board with recommendations. We do have some ideas as far as how to actually meet this particular directive, but just want to get some feedback first before moving forward with that. And then engaging school board members in ongoing team building sessions. The reason that this is blank is if you go back to, or if you recall with our professional development plan, part of the self-assessment, the reason for the self-assessment is to actually create objectives and goals, but then it's also part of the reason is for us to then fill in the rest of our professional development plan. And so it is, my thoughts are after we complete our self-assessment, from that self-assessment, then we will begin to plug in other topics. And we do know that team building actually needs to be threaded throughout all of our trainings. And so we'll have to talk as a board, for instance, if we want it to be separate sessions, or if in fact we want that to be an aspect of every training that we have moving forward. Secondly was standard 1.7. And again, this is the second standard that had to do, that was directly related to the governance body, us as a Board of Education. Developing our written procedures to ensure the number of members on a board committee doesn't represent a quorum. And this one is one that has been, we've talked some about, and there were some differences between what was actually listed on the website, but and what was in board docs. And so that has been completed, that information has been changed. Also, we're working to be sure, well, previously, all of our meetings, all of our committee meetings anyway, had been, we had been notifying the public But again, there was a difference in what we had on our website, what was available to the public, and then what was actually inside of board docs. The second directive, using the advisory committee structure to effectively gather feedback to help all board members receive the same information. This was the second area. So if you recall, I said there were 2 directives that we are working to get a little bit more clarity around before we put that task before an individual on the board or a smaller committee on the board. And so that was the other one. And then lastly, I'm sorry, did I skip a standard?
Mhm.
Did I skip 1.5?
1.5. I thought you just were going back to it because that was the insufficient. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No, actually, I didn't think about it that way, but okay. So this is our other standard. This was the standard that we received, was the only standard that we received insufficient. And so when we look at these directives, when we look at anything that says directive, of course, that has to take priority. But that first directive here is identifying and demonstrating the characteristics of a highly effective governing board. That is in progress. So you may remember we had trainings in February. We also began to have trainings back in the fall, but we also had some in February. I put this in progress because although we have had the highly effective board training looking at the GSBA standards, I do anticipate that this will, that we can't have enough of that. And so that we may actually see from our self-assessment that we may want to have more conversations or more trainings around highly effective board governance. The second directive is conduct, discuss, and document a board self-study before the start of the 2021 school year. And so what we know is that we actually had that scheduled, but just due to some unforeseen circumstances with our team, we had to reschedule that. And so that is scheduled for the end of August. That next directive about creating and documenting the behavioral productivity objectives, this is what I mentioned earlier. So not only are we required to do the self-assessment, from that self-assessment that we'll have in a couple of weeks, we actually need to identify objectives and strategies. So in other words, what are we hoping to accomplish that will help us reach some of the goals that we have? And then how will we know that we're there? That has the category that falls under is professional learning as seen. But again, this is not complete yet because we haven't completed the self-study. And so this is based on the self-study being done. And so that's why you see that blank right there. The last directive is providing whole board training sessions on our standards for effective governance. Again, this is in progress, so it's very similar to the earlier directive, but I don't know that we may need more. And so while we can check off and say, yes, we've had board training on effective governance, it's very well possible that we may want to add that, add more trainings regarding effective governance. Dr. Thomas?
Yes, so 2.1 and 2.1 is learners have equitable opportunities to develop skills and achieve the content and learning priorities established by the system. And there were 2 recommendations. The first is maintain efforts of addressing equity in the schools, setting high expectations for all students, utilizing data to examine success and closing achievement gaps while increasing student achievement, providing professional learning opportunities for educators, and et cetera. And we have been working, Mr. Gaskins has been working with Mr. Barlament, who has developed a data dashboard for us. We are working to utilize that more with our principals and them with their teachers, and sharing that information with our board, and also ensuring that what we are measuring is aligned with our strategic plan. so that we have the best metrics to capture our successes and our areas in need of improvement, but we also want to make sure that it aligns with the correct strategies that will impact our achievement and achievement gap. One of the things that we've been talking a lot about recently is the gap that will broaden as a result of our students having been out of school for this extended period of time. And Mr. Gaskins and his team recognizes that that's going to have to be an intensified area of focus for them in working to make sure that we're addressing any of those remediation needs while also identifying best practices to allow our students to perform the same, all of our students to perform equal to their peers. So that is a area of focus for us. The next recommendation is to ensure participation by the board and whole board governance training on the Cognia accreditation standards and expectations for school systems and schools prior to the next engagement review. And I won't read all of that to you, but that is in progress. The school board is working closely with Georgia School Boards Association, working on a self-assessment as has been referenced, but also on several plans for whole board training to ensure that there's understanding of those Cognia standards so that we can operate effectively as a body of 10. The next standard is 2.11, and that one is educators gather, analyze, and use formative and summative data that lead to demonstrable improvement of student learning. And so strengthening the process of analysis, interpretation, and use of data through job-embedded professional development on how to utilize results from both formative and summative assessments to drive instructional practices. And that again is taking place with work by Dr. Ezekiel, work from Mr. Barlament, also other formative assessments that are a part of our curriculum program, guided by Mr. Gaskins, and working with our teachers to ensure that we're not just collecting data for collection's sake, but that we actually are using that data to provide each individual student with their specific learning needs that is addressed to their uniqueness as individuals, and knowing that everyone does not need the same thing. So ensuring that we're taking this data, particularly our formative data, so that it can guide our instruction and direct teacher next steps in serving our students. And the last one is expanding the use of data to capture perception, experiential, demographic, and program evaluation data. And I've been working with Mr. Gaskins on exploring how we can use a program evaluator to capture some of those qualitative measures to ensure that the programs that we have in place are truly effective and making a difference in our disparity in achievement and also in learning for all of our students. All of these, as you see, are green. So the next place for us to go is to blue, and that's impactful, where you would really become a model for other school districts. And that is a goal for us as well. Dr. Gant, did you want me to go on, or did you want to do the next slide?
And switch over, and I think I can, yes, I can do it. And maybe you can tell me if I leave something out.
Okay.
But as I mentioned, the area of focus for a lot of the directives they have implications for policy and professional development. And so as Dr. Yeager mentioned earlier, that she and Mr. Harris have developed a policy review process. I have asked her to give us a brief update on where we are.
Yeah, so there's a great graphic. I just emailed it to you, Dr. Gant, and to Lisa Palmer. If one of you could load it, it's a bright yellow graphic.
I have it. I just can't
Give me a second. I'll try to.
I can't. You have it. I can't share my screen. So.
Give me a second. I'll pull it up.
Okay. I have it.
There it is.
I got it.
Okay.
Great, thank you. So Mr. Harris put this together after some conversations. And so what you can see is it's a 5-step. If she scrolls down, there's 5 steps here of how we're going to go about this effort. And it starts with the 2 of us kind of looking things over, which is what we've been doing so far, and developing these working groups, which I mentioned. And we have policies that correspond to each department that will go to leaders within the school district. So for example, operations, we will engage Mr. Fisher. Finance policies, we will engage Mr. Shinneman, and et cetera. And then those leaders will call their subcommittees together and work through the various policies. So the real work is that whoops, too fast. So step 2 is the real work, which is that each department will receive a deadline to review the policies and provide recommendations to the subcommittees, which will then meet and review these policies and the recommendations from the staff. So for example, a financial policy, we need to find out, is this still what you guys do, or is it going to change, or it hasn't changed, or is, okay. And the next step is the legal review, which is very, very critical. And poor Mr. Pruitt is going to have to work his tail out for us for a little while to help us make sure that all of these policies are compliant with the law, state law as occurs right now. So updated to the law. So that's going to take a big chunk of time as well, which is why we need to get through the subcommittees quickly. And then once that process has occurred, it will go to the full policy committee, where we will then sort of review the recommendations of the subcommittees and discuss each of the policies, and then hopefully move them up to the full board, which is step 5, which is the finish line. All policies, the respective department head and the subcommittee members should be prepared to discuss each of the policies presented to the policy committee. I think we missed a step, Mr. Harris. There was a step of going to the board, excuse me, but we'll go through the board. I have to fix our graphic. Did I miss something, Mr. Harris? Are you there? I think we missed a step here that I had in my head. That is, we'll go through the full board for final review as the step 5.
No, you're right. That actually is step 5. I just probably should have been clear that that's the board review stage. I kind of ran out of space based on my abilities.
Yeah.
But step 5 is the board review, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's great. So that's the process. As I mentioned, there's probably about 200 of these that we are working through as 6 or 7 different subcommittees. As I've said already, I'm happy to outline this in much more detail if you want in my board committee chair report, which I'll upload as soon as I can get it all typed up.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager. I will, let's see, I'll continue with where I think we left off.
I think you were going to talk about the professional development, Dr. Gant.
Yes, it's not allowing me to pull it back up and share it for you all. Let's see. I think my computer has just had enough of me.
Would you like for me to review it? Can you see it on your computer?
I can see it now. Yeah. Okay. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. And so, as Dr. Yeager mentioned, the policy review process. So they've done a very thorough job with revising that process. Also, we have the policy training coming up. One of the other options that has been tossed around, of course, is GSBA policy support, which would require GSBA and their team actually helping us and redoing our policy for us. The reason that I put this on here was just so that I could notify and we could just be clear about the things that have been discussed, but we have not decided to go in that direction at this current time. And so what that means is that we're in the process, or we have created our own process. Should something change, we do have a policy training coming up, then we'll update this. The other area of focus is professional development, if you look throughout the report. And the professional development calendar, if you will, consists of the following. And these are trainings that we've already had on effective governance, parliamentary procedure. We have 2 this month, as I mentioned. And then we also have additional dates set aside. I will also say that we may need to add additional dates. We will know a little bit more about the specific topics that we'll talk about on these dates after we complete our self-assessment, and then after we identify what our objectives are based on that self-assessment. Lastly, I'll just leave with us that our steps moving forward are continuing with policy as well as professional development, since those are critical areas of the report. Norms are also in there, but as I mentioned earlier, we are sort of on standby as it relates to our norms. One of the things that I think it was Mr. Pruitt mentioned earlier in conversation is that, you know, part of like knowing our policies, of course, is reviewing, reading them, but also being sure that we don't have like extra policies. And so we do have to ask ourselves, like, although norms are not policies, how much does it require of us to know? And so we're just, we want to be intentional about the work. And so again, we're waiting to hear back from GSBA, and I'll report that information to you as a board, and we can decide how to move forward. Steps moving forward also include continuing with operational processes that Dr. Thomas has mentioned with her team. Also, to put on our radar is to think about, do we need additional resources? And by additional resources, meaning, do we need to reach out to other people? We have GSBA, of course, and we have Cognia as an outside or an independent agency coming in. But might it be beneficial for us to reach out to boards or individuals who have navigated this process before, just as an additional checks and balances? Or if we feel that we are moving ahead effectively and we're confident with that, then that may not be the route we want to go. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, for us to continue thinking on as we move forward, is that a lot of the work that is before us will require personal and group commitment. And so even beyond redoing our policies, revising our policies, updating our policies, and going through board training, there has to be a personal commitment towards change. And then there has to be a group commitment towards change. So if you go back to some of those 4 final insights, those were related to
Are you all still there?
Yes.
I'm still here.
Okay.
I am too.
Big thunderstorm on this side of town.
I wonder if it was the lightning.
Yes, because it was pretty
Yeah,
bad over this way.
Yeah, electrical storm going on.
It is. I will just jump in while we wait for Dr. Gant to return and say that, and I've already shared this information with her. I've spoken with Dr. Andre Harrison from Cognia. We spoke on Tuesday, the 11th of this month, and he's anticipating that we should receive information on our visitation date, hopefully by tomorrow, if not tomorrow, the 1st of next week. He's hoping that for the purpose of continuity, that Dr. Schaefer ideally will be our lead evaluator, because he already knows our district. He knows from whence we were to whence we're trying to come. So hopefully he will be our lead evaluator. He said that Cognia recognizes that significant change will take time, but they do, expect to see that we have addressed some areas and then are making progress toward other areas. So he did share that. We talked some just about concerns for accreditation being lost. And he said, in general, there are 3 steps to a loss of accreditation: moving from accredited to accredited under review, then accredited under condition, and then you have your loss of accreditation. And you don't automatically go from review to condition. It's possible that we would be under review. They would come back, see that some areas have been addressed, their progress toward other areas, and they could leave us under review. They could come back and see that we're not making any progress, and addressing any areas, and then you would move to condition. And he said that essentially you only jump to a automatic loss of accreditation when there are egregious actions that have taken place. So we did have that conversation, and he was very helpful. He said their goal with Cognia is always to help districts improve. It's not their goal to make anyone lose accreditation. They want to help us improve, and they just want to see that we are equally committed to that work just as they are. And I think that aligned with what Dr. Gant was saying about personal commitment and group commitment, that we all just have to be reflective of our individual actions as well as our collective actions. And it's not, to me, just about because Cognia is coming. It's about because it makes for more effective and efficient work. And when we're more effective and efficient, then it helps us to move forward the goals of our strategic plan, which then really impacts student learning. And so I hope that we can focus on, and not that we aren't, but I think the focus should be on doing better, because better makes us better, not just because someone is coming to catch us not doing better. It's kind of like at home, you're cleaning up your room because company's coming, but really you just need to clean up your room because it's not sanitary. And so, looking at what we do, I think it becomes embedded in our practices when we do it, because we truly are personally and collectively committed to being a stronger organization and not just doing something because they're outsiders looking in. So it's Dr. Gann, are you back with us? I think she's still gone. Miss
She is.
She's still,
Dr. Thomas.
she's not.
She asked me to let Dr. Maddox to continue.
Okay. I was about to say that.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you wrap this presentation up. I wasn't a part of that discussion with you and Dr. Gant. So is there anything else you want to add?
That was it. That was her last slide, Dr. Maddox. So I think we are finished. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Thomas.
Yes, sir.
I was going to say this to Dr. Gant before she lost connection with us. And as I said, it's probably electrical storm. She may have lost power over there. But anyway, I'm hoping that we have some listeners that was listening with the BOE and NAACP meeting. And the reason I'm saying that, because it's widespread out there, and even some things printed in the flagpole that some vague answers had been given. I'm just sitting here thinking now in terms of what you all walked us through. Excuse me. If a snapshot could have been given, I think it would have been better. So I'm hoping some listeners from that meeting is listening tonight, because it was mentioned several times. The work was in progress. Well, that was just vague. And what was presented tonight is pretty explicit in terms of what's going on.
Yes, sir. And I can get with her to see if there's a way, and there is easily a way just to capture this information, and we could put it under the Cognia info tab on our website as well.
That would be good.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yep, that would be fantastic.
Mr. Harris, I know you're listening. If that's something that Ms. Moore can work with us on, if you can have her reach out to me, we can get together and come up with a document that gives a nice, concise snapshot of where we are and the actions that we've taken.
So what would be the problem with just putting the, make a PDF out of this and putting that document up, so that, again, when you update it, we'd have to just resave and repost. But I think it would be the best transparency to just show the.
Listen out for a minute. I got to take over and grab a seat.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Are there any other comments?
John has his hand up.
Yes, I have it. Dr. Thomas, thank you for that presentation. I just want to make sure, one thing that came out of last fall's GSBA training that just kind of stunned me was that this board had not been regularly doing the ethics form signing. And so if you could just tell me, I may have just missed it in the volume of information, but where are we on that in terms of making sure that we make that kind of a cornerstone of what we do every year? Because it just seemed to go away. I think Dr. Yeager may have an answer to this.
If I may, so we voted in the policy committee to make the review of BH an annual event every summer. And so that will happen. And then once, and that actually is happening tonight, we're adopting our revised and reviewed BH tonight. So once we've done that tonight and you've all read it, then we will be, the board, the code of ethics is what we're doing tonight, I believe. So yeah, so you'll have done that and now you can sign the form. And I think Dr. Gant mentioned in her president's report, maybe she can tell me it for sure, but I think there's a form to be signed now.
She also sent us an email about that.
Okay, thank you.
But it's on the, so Mr. Harris has agreed that we make this an annual event. We look at BH.
I would love for us to look at it in January. I know you guys are going to review it tonight, but January, when we're doing board assignments and committee assignments and kind of looking back, it would be, you know, I just in my mind had thought that the first of the year would be a good time to do that. But I don't have a problem with June for now, but there are a lot of things that we should be doing in January as well.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, thank you.
There's also I'm back.
Yay.
Permanently.
Welcome back.
Yes, lightning is not, you know, not on my side tonight, but there's also another document that, so there's a document that actually confirms that we have our training, right? The whole board training that Ms. Palmer, she keeps up with like who's had what training and then we submit that. But then there's also, Dr. Raim mentioned that there's also a place for us to submit our professional development plan to the Department of Education. And so she is checking on that for us if there is a standard form or if it's more of our own, you know, our own document that we create. And I just made that note simply because Dr. Knox also asked about the board of our ethics training. And so thank you, Dr. Yeager, for reminding us about that. But so there are actually two things that we will need to, three actually, that we have to send in as a board: our code of ethics, verification that we have had our whole board training, and then a professional development plan.
What's the due date for those things, Madam President?
The board of, so the document confirming that we have our hours, from what I recall, I think that is typically done in June or July. I'll have to double check. And I also have to circle around with Ms. Palmer. I know historically that's been submitted by the district on our behalf, but I also know, I think, Ms. Palmer, you may have been transitioning in, or I don't even know if you were here last year when that was submitted on our behalf.
I was, and they have pushed the deadline back this year.
Oh, have they?
I have a new deadline, and I believe it's September. It may be October, but I'll look and double check.
Okay, thank you. That's for the document confirming our whole board training hours. With the professional development plan, as well as the board of ethics signing that, I'm not sure, but I will find out. I have actually spoke with Dr. King and Dr. Raim again this week so that they can confirm whether there's a template or not. And I will confirm the dates. I think that the board of ethics is typically the summer. Like before you actually, as you're going into a new year, you know, basically after that fiscal year, you're getting ready to go into a new fiscal and school year. I don't want to give incorrect information. Either way, now is a good time for us to go ahead and submit all three of those. Well, at least two of them. Ms. Palmer said that they had extended the deadline.
Is that going to be for 2019, fiscal year ending 2019 in June? Is that how we're going to do it?
You mean for the one confirming our hours?
Yeah, I think that the one that we're going to go ahead and submit now, is that going to be for 2019? So, yeah, it would be 2019. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then the professional development plan would be for this school year.
2020, right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about trying to get all this stuff signed. I mean, I don't think about leaving the house anymore. So I do know when you mentioned that I need to make arrangements with Lisa to sign the our executive meeting notes, that I need to do so. I wish there was more of an electronic way of doing it, but there's probably not.
We can try to figure that piece out, Mr. Davis. I think, I'm sure between the district and our brains and expertise, maybe we could figure out how to get some electronic signatures. But remember, with the papers that we're supposed to sign, when we did the parliamentary training, for instance, and I would imagine with any of our trainings, we have documented who was there on record. And so our trainer at that time, and I imagine this will be the case with others, just said, be sure that we submit those roles when we can. But I just don't want them to leave I want us to be sure that we're on top of that and that we don't forget. Any other questions? I did when I was gone. I'm not sure if all of your questions and concerns were addressed, but that was really the conclusion. Dr. Thomas, we may be inside of your report. I'm not sure. Because I've hopped back on late.
I think we're good. Dr. Gant, we talked about making some corrections to the website and what was on there. And I took a couple of notes, and it was requested, Mr. Worthy and also Ms. Davis, and actually several people thought it would be a good idea to put on our website the information that you shared as a PDF with the update of where we are. So for people who really had some concerns that we were vague with progressing, that this will show some specific action steps for people who might not have been on tonight.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and just a reminder, the emphasis is progress. And then Dr. Thomas, did you share as it relates to the date that they will be following up with us to propose a date?
Yes, ma'am. I actually went over all of my information from Dr. Harrison and shared that that he will let us know either tomorrow or hopefully Monday at the latest when they will return. And I also went over information about accreditation, accredited under review, and also under conditions.
Okay. Thank you. That was it for me.
Yes, I think we covered everything on both of our agendas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, just for that information for this presentation.
Oh, okay.
I wish, and I just have one thing under my agenda tonight though, so.
Okay, well, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, and we have received a request, excuse me, last week that we provide another update on where we were with our virtual learning and plans for reopening. And I know we have a slide presentation. I have asked that it just be new information for you all, not a full review of everything that we did last week. So we have slides that have been provided. I think Mr. Gaskins has some information he's going to share. Mr. Harris has some information, and Nurse Amy, as always, has a very thorough report for us. And I'm sorry I hadn't seen the slide deck to see whom else is on there, but I will turn it over. Mr. Gaskins, were you first tonight?
I am not first, but I can get it kicked off for us, Dr. Thomas.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Gant, Dr. Maddox, board members, and board-elect members. We just, as Dr. Thomas mentioned, wanted to give you an update on what has transpired in the last week as we consider opening school. So we will have Amy Rohr give us an update on health, wellness, and the metrics attached to that. And Lynn and Amy have worked very closely, so Lynn will assist her in that. We have just a short update around operations and our technology. I will give an update for instructional service and school performance, including what we've done with our special education department. And then Lawrence Harris will give us some updates on community engagement and strategic partnerships. So at this time, I will turn it over to Amy and to Lynn.
All right. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, community, CCSD colleagues. I'm going to try to be really brief tonight with you guys, but give you some information, just a few quick updates. Athens-Clarke County continues to be in widespread transmission. I don't feel the need to go into detail anymore, but just to let you know that we're hanging around 450 cases per 100,000 right now. As we move forward, the school district is looking at a few different metrics, but definitely the cases per 100K is something that we're taking into consideration. We're also looking at our positivity rate, among other things such as hospital capacity, age-related cases, and other indicators of how we're doing here locally in our community. I did include this map here, just a visual for you guys. This came off of the Georgia Emergency Management Agency website, but it just shows that we are Region E. And as of yesterday, this was updated yesterday, our ICU beds are at 91.4% capacity. So this is just an example of some of the information that the task force is taking into consideration as we look to reopen our schools. So last time I spoke with you guys, I shared that I was having difficulty finding the local positivity rate, and I'd like to thank members of the board who reached out and helped. I'd like to thank the vast resources that we have here in Clarke County. A lot of smart people started asking the same question that I was asking, and I'm thankful to say that this week our District 10 DPH posted a data report to their website, a weekly update for health data, COVID data specific to Clarke County and specific to our District 10 region. So Lisa, if you're driving, can you click on that District 10 DPH report? You all in so that you know resources, but this is great. It's a step in the direction. We have a 10 county region, so you can see up at the top the different counties that are included in this report. And the first page is cumulative totals for the 10 county district. You can see, if you'll stop right there, scroll up just a little bit. Yeah, perfect. Or one more so you can see the header of that. Okay, so these are the cumulative totals for the 10 county district, and these are since the beginning of COVID data collection. Down below are tests performed by just our local DPH. So section up top is, you know, the red, it says includes tests by all providers. So that's hospitals, doctors, urgent care centers, all PCR tests. Keep in mind that the antigen or the rapid tests are not included in any of this data. Scroll down, those are the tests performed by the Northeast Health District. Those are just the PCR tests that have been performed by our local DPH sites. So you can see that the positivity rate for our DPH sites is about 6% there. It's that final number. And then up top, I think it was closer to 9% for all provider tests. But if you scroll on down, I don't want to get too in the weeds here. They've produced a county by county one-page data graphic, which is very helpful for us. So we're going to stop on the Clarke County one, which is second, and just stop right there, if you will, please. This is a one-page infographic specific to Clarke County, and what we're looking at is our positivity rate So our percentage of total tested with positive results is the third line in that box up at the top. And we're interested in the rate over the previous 14 days, and DPH is currently reporting that at 9.6%. Now, I was hesitant to share this with you guys tonight because I want to stress that this is preliminary data. This is not likely our positivity rate is much higher than this due to a couple factors. Number one, the antigen test not being reported. Number two, what we've been calling kind of the UGA effect, which is the positive cases reported to people who don't have Clark County as their permanent home residence. Those positives are going back to their home counties, not to count it here in Clark County. So we are working with our DPH to amend this report per school district needs and per local health needs. So it may change if we can figure out a way to count in our our UGA student reports, and also if there's a way to consider antigen tests. But right now we're at 9%. And I would say bonus points from last meeting, if anybody can remember what percentage we want to be at. But the answer, ding, 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 is 5. So just something to keep in mind that we have now access to this positivity rate, and we will continue to monitor it as we look to phase in and out of reopening schools. And then also keep in mind that this is preliminary data, and we are still working to get more accurate data that represents our community. Okay, great. So if you can go back to the slide, please. Great. I wanted to let you guys know quickly about the Hillsman Health Center. They are now doing the PCR test in a drive-up capacity for all CCSD staff. So if you remember, I mentioned it was a wellness clinic only. We are trying to keep sick, symptomatic patients out. They are still performing the antibody test in the clinic, but if you need a PCR test, you can call for an appointment and they'll come out and do a drive-up test for you. We did send out that survey to all staff. We had about 200 people respond, and they are scheduled tomorrow from 7:30 to 11:30 a.m. to do a mass drive-through PCR testing site for CCSD employees. So just an update that we did have quite a few employees take advantage of that resource, and that drive-through testing is happening tomorrow. Another update is in regards to our employee reporting process. Lynn Duke and I have been working collaboratively to kind of formalize this process, and it was sent out to principals and supervisors this evening. We have a form, an official form that employees will report to the district whether they have received a positive result or whether they have been considered a close contact of somebody who has a positive result. And the moving forward for this is that the school nurses will receive those forms and call and follow up with every employee who reports a positive to make sure that we don't have additional exposures in our building and really try to mitigate that risk for employees. HR will then communicate an official notification to the employee about the quarantine days required or isolation or whatever is necessary per DPH guidelines. So as we look at all this and look to return to school, and staff are coming back into the buildings 2 days a week right now, and we're still thinking about how soon can we get our students back in, because we all recognize that we do need students to return in person. So we're looking at all this data, and we've drafted some metrics for an in-person return, which I'm going to share with you, but I'd like you to keep in mind that it's a draft. And this is my recommendations based on a lot of conversations I've had with other school districts, with other school health leaders across the state, with our local epidemiologists here in town, as well as with our Department of Public Health. So nobody can say specifically, Clark County, this is when you need to bring back K through second, or this is when you need to bring back 3 through 5. But based on all the information and resources we have, this is my recommendation. So one of the things that is absolutely necessary is that we begin to phase back in when we have a positivity rate at 5% or below. That's the WHO, the World Health Organization's recommendation for a safe reopening of community and schools. So again, according to the DPH report that was put out this week, we're at 9.6%. So once we get down to 5%, then we can start talking about our metrics and our cases per 100K. And the DPH is going to put that report out weekly or every other week, I'm not sure, but it includes 14-day trends. So we're going to look at those trends. And once we have 3 consecutive 14-day trends, then it's my recommendation that we look to begin our phases of reopening. We could have 3 consecutive declining trends, or we could go ahead and meet the metrics up top. Let's say if we go down from 450 to 175 cases, then we'll look to bring back, pre-K through second, or when we get down to 150 per 100,000, we might consider bringing back third through fifth, or if we get down to 125, then we'll bring back the middle school. And, our goal is to be at 100 cases per 100,000 or less. That is as defined by the DPH when we are no longer in widespread transmission here in our community. So obviously there's a few considerations here and things to think about, and we're going to continue to talk about these metrics and take guidance from our local health officials and change them as we need to. We're going to run these metrics by our cross-functional teams. We're meeting next week to discuss this. Just to be candid, a couple issues that I see right out the bat are what happens if we have a decline, a 6-week decline or a 3-report decline, but the decline only leaves us at 900 or something. What if we have a spike up to 1,500 and we decline, but we're at 900 and there's a large discrepancy from our metrics of being at 175. So in that scenario, we'll loop in our public health authorities and ask them to guide us through that situation. But epidemiologists have been stressing that as long as we keep a initial guideline of the positivity rate being at 5%, we're lessening the chances of a huge discrepancy between the 3-week decline and the cases per 100,000. So this is being talked about, it's being worked on, and I just want everybody to be aware. And I know that the community and the board and everybody is kind of looking for metrics, health metrics to guide our reopening, and in response to that, and also just in a true effort to bring our children safely back into the buildings, I wanted to share with you guys the draft that we're working on. That's my update for tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to share information.
Thank you, Nurse Amy.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Taylor Duke will give us an update on technology and talk a little bit about that.
Good evening. Very briefly, we wanted to touch on the device distribution plan. The plan is much like it was this past spring. If you have a working device, we're asking that you keep it. Schools are scheduling a contactless device pickup with parents for those that need a device or those that need repairs for their device, and that's occurring now until the start of school. That's a very brief update from technology.
All right, thank you, Taylor. I will give our updates for instructional services and school performance. So this has been a very exciting week for me and for teachers. We started our cross-functional team with our digital learning teams. So on Tuesday, our Office of Early Learning, including pre-K and 35 elementary school teachers, as well as 8 middle school teachers, started creating exemplary lessons to be used for the first 2 weeks of school. So we've asked principals to recommend individuals that were really experts in their content, those who leverage digital tools in meaningful ways, and really those individuals that were familiar with some of our curriculum resources to help create exemplary lesson plans to help teachers adapt to a digital learning environment. The time we spent together on Tuesday and they're working with members of my team to develop those plans has been really exciting and energizing. Our teachers are doing really amazing things in those contents, and we want to make sure that our students, no matter who their teacher is or what school they attend, are really getting some rigorous and engaging activities. Our high school teachers are working cross district collaboration. So individuals from Cedar Shows, Classic City, and Clark Central High Schools. They worked extensively this summer with revising some of the units. Just a reminder, we've gone to a block schedule, so some revisions around those units were needed. We're also working with some of those non-EOC courses now to create units that fit the block scheduling and also lend themselves to virtual learning. Dan Smith is our coordinator of fine arts, health, and PE. He has created a weekly professional learning community for all of our art and music teachers, as well as our drama teachers, those individuals that are fine arts teachers, as well as health and PE, to meet weekly on Fridays to have some cross district collaboration. So all of those engaging activities that they are creating, they can create those as a team, so all of our students can benefit from those. As it relates to special ed updates, Heidi Hill was unable to be with us today, but I will pinch hit for her. All of our case managers have contacted or attempted contact with all of our parents of students with disabilities. So Heidi just asked if there are any parents listening that have not received contact from their case manager, please call the school. As you know, our teachers are back working 2 days a week. And so we really want to make sure that if you have not been contacted, or your number has changed, or for whatever reason, please just contact the school so those case managers can talk to you and support your student with disabilities. Heidi and her team have worked on virtual learning plans. Those meetings have already begun and they're going to go through September 4th. As Heidi mentioned last week, all of our students with disabilities will have a virtual learning plan so we can ensure that we're meeting the items of their IEPs. The other thing that Heidi and her team will be doing, they are starting next week with our high school teachers and then middle school and elementary. It's just making themselves available to all of our special education teachers so they can help support them in supporting our students during virtual learning. So all of our special ed coordinators will meet with those teachers and answer any questions that they have and help them navigate with parents, just supporting our students. The last update, which I've received several emails, good emails about, it's just our video conferencing. No. So we will be offering 2 video conferencing applications for our teachers. One is Google Meet, the other is Zoom. Google Meet, it comes with our G Suite, our Google Suite. They are making some updates to Google Meet that will be updated by October. So some additional security measures, they're adding breakout rooms, and they're also adding options to record lessons and store those lessons. Zoom has also, I spoke to one of their representatives today. That is another video conferencing application that a lot of our teachers have used. So we have purchased a Zoom Pro account for all of our teachers, student support, as well as our district staff. We leveraged our buying power, so we were able to save a lot of money for our schools. So we will use our CARES money to buy the Zoom accounts for the district, and all of those schools and district offices that purchase individual Zoom accounts, they will get a refund on their money. And so the district will pick up that cost so schools can use their money on other things that we need for kids. Professional learning is always important. We will have an administrator training with Zoom on Wednesday, which is a regular part of our principal meeting. Then on August 24th, all of our media specialists, our Clark Innovation Academy members, those are our teachers that are really leading innovation as it relates to technology, will be invited to the training, and any lead teacher that can go back and be an early adopter for their staff will be invited to receive that training on August 24th. And then we're also exploring Zoom Phone. So this is an option where teachers and staff members can use Zoom Phone to call parents from Zoom instead of their personal numbers. So we realize that sometimes that parents may not answer a number that they don't know, but they will always answer the school number. So this is just an additional option that Taylor Duke will explore with Zoom just to make sure that we are providing enough communication and consistent communication for our families and our staff. So that is my update, and I will turn it over to Mr. Lawrence Harris.
Mr. Gaskins, before you finish, I think there were like a couple of really neat features with Zoom. It would record those live lessons and then teachers could share with students who weren't able to tune in. And there was another feature, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, that was really good where I think they could see, they'll be able to monitor exactly, it allows them to monitor who was there, who was present, who was participating. Because we have asked, I recall that the board had asked for some data around that when we were in this virtual mode in the spring of how many students were actually taking advantage of that resource. We will, I'm sorry, be able to have some metrics in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, Dr. Thomas, your short-term memory might be better than mine, but one of the really good options was that teachers would be able to record their lessons. And so if students miss the lesson, the teacher can assign the lesson to the student. So instead of just posting the lesson, the student can actually be assigned the lesson, and then we can record if that student actually watched the lesson, which is a great option. The other option is also, it has some capabilities to find out when students are having internet problems and keeping the attendance of those students that have logged in. So in the demo that I was shown today, it showed the difference between someone's power going out, right? And knowing that that is a real thing that has happened versus a student who had just logged out because they may have become disinterested in the lesson. So that is really important. It will have a district dashboard that we will be able to monitor, principals will be able to monitor, as well as teachers will be able to monitor. The other thing that doesn't seem like a big deal, but is a big deal, is that you will also be able to put the students in alphabetical order on the screens. So the teacher will be able to have a seating chart that, you know, you don't think about these things with Zoom, but now that Zoom has really transitioned to the K-12 space, they're really trying to be adaptable and accommodate the needs of our students. I got an email from a principal today saying, you know, are we using Google Meet? Are we using Zoom? And that will totally be up to the autonomy of the teacher in the school, because we think that Google Meet is coming along and catching up. But we just want to make sure that teachers have what they need. There was a middle school today that was actually practicing and rehearsing lessons today with Zoom. And so teachers are just ready to use whatever we have. So when September 8th comes, they're ready, and we believe that Zoom and Google Meet can meet that need.
There was a question in chat. Did you see that one?
Oh, will students be required to have their cameras on?
Yeah.
So we're working on that with schools. That is a question that came up with principals, and we have not, I think, given a district directive around that. What we want teachers to consider is that sometimes students, for whatever reason, may not feel comfortable sharing their screen. There might be something going on in their family. We want to give schools the autonomy to kind of create some guidelines around sharing their screen, not sharing their screen, how they, you know, show up for their lesson. We don't want to discourage anyone unintentionally from engaging with instruction. And so I will leave that to the expertise of the teacher, especially those teachers that create those really warm and engaging relationships with students, that they will be able to get kids to share their screen if they think that that's appropriate, and they'll be able to know the nuances of when a student doesn't need to share their screen. And so, Dr. Thomas, I don't know if you want me to entertain any more questions, or I think Lawrence is the last one to present, and then we'll be able to answer any questions that the board has.
Okay, and there's just one more in the chat, and we can come back to it after Mr. Harris.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Well, I'll keep it brief since people have questions for Mr. Gaskins. So just an update for you all, just since last week, our first day of school campaign that I'm the team lead for, we are meeting next Wednesday. really excited to get together with our PAB and LSGT and TAB members, as well as some of our school leaders who have signed up for the committee. We're going to be helping to build excitement around the first day of school. I know I shared that last week, but I think it's so important that our families and students get excited for what's coming on September 8th. There's some really exciting things happening. Some great work's been done really since the beginning of spring of this year. So that is next Wednesday we'll be meeting. So I hope to be able to give an update in your future board update on what came out of that meeting, what are some of the plans. But also you probably will see it because the energy will be high on social media and out in the community. So even if you don't see it in the board update, hopefully you see it around the community because people are getting excited about school. Project PALS, as you all know, I did an introduction on that initiative. It stands for Promoting the Advancement of Learning for All Students. I've started doing one-on-one calls with several organizations who signed up to be a part of this initiative. The goal of Project PALS is really to bring together high impact, high engaging youth serving organizations in Athens-Clarke County who will be able to provide virtual, engaging and enriching experiences for our students, either after school, on the weekends, during school when they're not logged on for class. And so we have some amazing community partners who already do great programming with our students, but who have had to pivot their programs because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we're looking at how can we as a school district help to partner with our community organizations, giving them access to work with our students in our schools and figure out how they can provide that impact in our schools and our students. So just really excited about that initiative. It's coming together really nicely. I do have about 9 more people to call. And then hopefully the list continues to grow. So it's great that people want to partner with us. Next slide for whoever's driving. Thank you. So last kind of update I have is I am working, and I gave an update last week with childcare. I do want to give, a shout out to Mr. Tim Johnson and Communities in Schools. They have a early childcare strategic action team that I've been able to be work with. I know last week I wasn't able to kind of give specific details because we were really working to make sure we were able to make this happen. But we are working with our area childcare providers. So we now have a list, thanks to the members of that committee, of childcare providers in town that we will be communicating with to see who will be able to take on some school-aged children for childcare in the coming weeks when school starts. And so we have started going down that list, calling our childcare providers. For those who may not know, of course, many of our childcare providers are margin-based, which means that they are completely based off the amount of students they're able to enroll. That's how they're able to stay in business. And so many of our childcare providers, of course, are operating at 40 to 50% right now because many parents are keeping their infants at home. And so not only is this a great way for us to partner to provide childcare, but it helps keeps our area childcare providers open and operating for when the pandemic does end. There's places for our young children to go. So we are working on that. We have a team that is calling. We have a long list of childcare providers. We are only looking at GACE certified and licensed childcare centers for now. We are not expanding into the houses or the personal homes yet. And I just think, that's just good practice for now. So we are excited to hopefully be able to provide that. It will not, of course, cover all 14,000 kids in our district. So I do want to put that out there. But for those who are in high need, we want to make sure that we do have some type of options for our students. So I just want to say I appreciate Communities in Schools, their strategic action committee, for meeting with me for the past couple of weeks and us really trying to formulate this plan for how we can do it. Also, just want to throw out that our school level town hall, some of you may have already begun hearing about them. Several of our school leaders will be holding school level town halls to get information out to their school communities, as well as open houses. So we are now in that season of really gearing up for return to instruction for our students. And so I know there was a question last week about whether those would be happening. And so our school leaders have signed up for those dates, and that information should be forthcoming in the next week or two. So that way you all can hear about the school level town halls and school communities can attend. And the last thing, I'm just always going to put in a plug for our LSGTs. We have some amazing local school governance team members out there who have been working hard in the background, sending information and details. But we do have our LSGT University scheduled for August 25th and 26th, all by Zoom, 5:30, 7:30. I'd like to invite anybody present who'd like to attend. We have an amazing agenda prepared where our LSGT members will be learning on day one of just the broad flexibility and about governance as an LSGT member, as well as the many opportunities they have to help innovate to improve student achievement. And then day two, my amazing colleagues from the superintendent's cabinet will be presenting information around the 5 authority areas that our LSGTs have authority over in our school system. So it's gonna be a really great training, split into 2 nights, so that way we didn't have to go from 5 to 9:30. So hopefully everybody appreciates that. And that concludes my update. So I'll be happy for any questions.
And Dr. Thomas, those are all of the updates. We can start with Mr. Davis's question in the chat. If
Yes,
you,
thank you all. And Mr. Davis, I noticed had two questions. I'm going to answer the bottom one, Mr. Gaskins, who's coordinating overall counselors. So counselors are already under Mr. Gaskins' department since they help in an instructional capacity. Social workers, they still have a director, our social workers, psychologists, and nurses. And we actually had those directors in interviews with us this week for the new executive director of school supports. And we will be doing round 2 of those interviews tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have someone to recommend to you at the next board meeting. Behavior specialists they're under Ms. Hill, is that correct, Mr. Gaskins?
yes, ma'am.
And that is also under instructional services, so they're being supported there. And then what directions are being given, I think that kind of goes back to your first question. So early on, and we may need to do more of this, and Mr. Gaskins can correct me, but early on, Mr. Davis, we had our principals make sure that our students knew that our support staff were there and available for them. Psychologists are still under Anna Morgan, so they have been receiving direction. All of those departments have gotten guidance from several of us. In the absence of Dr. Myers, we've been working with them. Mr. Gaskins has been giving supervision support to them. I've done some supervision support for social work. So we have been providing that support for them absent of a individual that's over school supports. So they have been getting the support they need and have done an excellent job. As you can see from Nurse Amy, she's done an amazing job without a direct chief to report to, and that is also her department. But in terms of social emotional needs, we had reached out early on to let them know that the counselors were available, social workers were available. A psychologist is a little different, but we have told them to notify the school. In addition, we've had Go Guardian, which we have throughout the year normally, but we have also been monitoring that during the break to ensure that is a tool that allows us to monitor what students are searching for on their devices. And so we have continued to monitor that, and any student who is searching for something that suggests that they are depressed or considering self-harm, we have individuals that are on call daily to reach out to those students as well. And we were notifying, Lynn said psychologists have been setting up appointments with families for testing next week. We have been notifying them of those services through emails from the individual schools, but I will allow Mr. Gaskins to share if I've overlooked something.
No, I think that is exactly right, Dr. Thomas. We are working, as we mentioned last time, just to have a major communication touch with all of our students and their families. Mr. Davis, I think in your first question around SEL, it's kind of layered. So if you'll just walk with me for a second. So one of the things around SEL is that we have ensured that 30 minutes per day is dedicated to SEL lessons. So a SEL lesson or a morning meeting for students in K-8 and advisement for our high school students. We just feel like it's really important that our students start off by centering their day. The other part is that we've done an inventory and we're trying to ensure that we have all of the materials that teachers need to teach those SEL lessons. I just reviewed an inventory yesterday, and we're just trying to make sure that our counselors and our teachers have all of those SEL lessons that they need so we can have all of those ordered as soon as possible. One thing that you all will have an opportunity to vote on tonight is Newsela. Newsela also has an SEL component that has SEL lessons that teachers can use. So that's another resource that we'll have for our teachers. So Tessa Barbazan, she is our Director of Counseling, and Heidi Hill, of course, Executive Director of Special Ed and Behavior Supports, have worked very closely around SEL. So Ms. Barbazan is meeting, I think almost weekly. I don't want to misspeak, but she's met a lot with our counselors to make sure that we do have a plan on communicating with those individuals that have needed social emotional support in the past. We've had some business, I won't say business partners, but some partners that are mentoring our students that have said, we've totally lost contact with some of our students over the break. But what we are seeing is now that school is kind of revving up and they see that cars are in the parking lot and principals are sending out correspondence, we have been able to engage more with students. But that is definitely a part of our plan, Mr. Davis, is to make sure that our counselors are trying to make one-on-one contact with those students who have received social emotional support on a one-on-one basis in the past. And then we're also just trying to make sure that we have all the materials that our teachers need to support SEL for the larger school community.
And listening to reading Mr. Davis's question, I think it's a good idea, Mr. Gaskins, for us as we're doing communications that maybe, counselors can even do a introduction, and that might be planned as part of their open houses and town halls to introduce themselves, but also just sending out an email to families saying, this is who I am, I'm here, these are the kinds of things I can help with. Mr. Gaskins?
Yes, ma'am. I don't know if there were any more questions. I'm sorry.
Yes, I was waiting and then a bolt of lightning came behind me. So
Yeah.
you heard that, Mr. Worthy. I think I lost everyone. Are there any other questions for anyone that's shared tonight?
Yeah,
Dr. Thomas, very quickly, and I know that everything you all are saying. Now, first of all, let me commend you all for continuing to do an amazing job for reopening, and everything is around virtual learning now, but for some unknown reason, if we're able to go back face to face or whenever that happens, and I'm hoping that it's going to happen sometime in the near future here. But anyway, my question is this. Have y'all worked with the principals to see whether the principal, especially middle school principals, high school principals, have a plan put together in terms of communicating that to the students when they come in the building, that they have to adapt, needing to adapt to the immediate situation? Reason I'm saying that, especially being a retired high school principal, I'm thinking about what happened at North Paulding High School.
Yes,
just look, every time I see that, I'm like, I don't think anything was communicated to those students, and didn't have any supervision in the hall to keep them moving rather than congregating. So are the principals working on a plan to prevent that?
So, Mr. Worthy, our secondary principals, they meet weekly. Dr. Neil Crossland, our ED of secondary, he meets with them. That is their concern. They are trying to make sure that they are doing things systemically. I will follow up with him just to see where we are so we can provide that update to you. I would imagine, but I want to leave some space for those principals to decide on what their plan is. But I would imagine that in those morning meetings, when we're not teaching those SEL lessons, that we could also teach as we get closer to that phase 1, 2, and 3 around. So we're getting ready to come back to school in 3 weeks. These are some of the things that we will need you all to do to keep you safe and to keep our teachers safe. So that is something that we can put on our agenda to talk about.
Thank you very much.
Is it Mr. Davis or someone I heard with questions?
I went ahead and just posted it for Mr. Harris.
Mr. Harris, do you see his question?
I'm scrolling through the
Oh,
comments.
I can ask. Mr. Harris, have we reached out to UGA, or have they reached out to us, but preferably us reach out to them, particularly the College of Education, to see what kind of supports could be put in place? And, I'm still kind of wondering about if they're still meeting as a college, and if they're still training teachers, and If we're talking about breakout sessions and things like that, conceivably, I don't know if that's something that we could utilize those folks who've been in education studying it for 3-4 years.
I have not. And I may not be understanding how we be using the faculty in the Mary Frances Early College of Ed, but I'm happy to talk more ideas that you may have about how those faculty members could potentially help us in our efforts. I just don't think I'm understanding the question, but definitely happy to talk ideas.
No, I guess I'm talking about more about their students.
Oh, students helping? No, yeah, I haven't reached out to them, but definitely can do that.
Can we make that an agenda item for the Government Relations Committee next week?
Well, we have a meeting in a couple of weeks with our University of Georgia Professional Development Schools Committee. I was trying to get that out. And we had talked through, in the past, we utilized that forum for us to share ways that we can partner. And that group is really strictly, well, mostly, not strictly, mostly College of Education. And Mr. Gaskins and Mr. Michael Harris are a part of that group. But that is something we could place on our agenda with them to discuss some ways that we could utilize supports and possibly how we could use their students to assist in some of these forms, particularly students who normally would have been student teaching anyway.
Sort of as a follow-up to that, but not just with the College of Education, one of my questions was if there are community organizations that haven't contacted you or that you haven't been in touch with, but they want to see if they can help, should they contact you, Lawrence? Is there a form, or contact you and you would send them? I remember you saying that you were sending out surveys.
Yeah, if they just want to email me, I can send them the form to sign up.
Okay.
And I see a question from Dr. Yeager. Ms. Duke did respond. So those teachers are coming in. It is a hybrid, 2 days a week in the building, 3 days at home. So it's a total of 8 days that they will be in the building between now and September 8th. One of the things I heard Mr. Gaskins mention was how helpful it has been for teachers to begin recording some of those lessons, practicing utilizing some tools that they've used in the past, but using them differently now because they're teaching with them virtually, how to utilize their what used to be known as smart boards that we now call interactive boards, how to set up their computers where those interactive boards are on the screen so they can work out math problems or work out chemistry formulas. And so we have received some very positive feedback from many staff that it's given them an opportunity to re-envision their space in a virtual way to ensure that they can provide students with what they need. I will say that we have been working with TAB to try to develop a survey that will go out to teachers and all staff. And we've kind of gone back and forth on that survey. So right now it is being vetted by our survey expert in the district. And my goal was to have that out today. Hopefully we can have that out tomorrow before lunch, just to get input from teachers on how has it gone? Do they still have apprehensions? What are some things that we could do differently to make them more comfortable? Are their colleagues adhering to safety practices? I notice that we're back in our building, but if anyone walks in our office, we're putting on our mask. If we go to the restroom, any shared areas, everyone has on their mask coming in and out of the building. But is that happening everywhere? And, if not, what are some things we can do to make teachers feel more comfortable in their environment? But I do think there was some misunderstanding that teachers are there every day. So they're divided. So half the teachers are there Monday, Wednesday, half Tuesday, Thursday. And then we still have to remove those who are out because of their own health reasons, health of families, and childcare issues. So my guess is that we probably have about, and I'm just guessing, about 75% at the most of our staffs that are working. And then that is divided in half to about 35 to 37%. So on any given day, you have less than 40% of your staff in a building because they are split Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. And so now we're down to just 6 days before students return virtually that we are asking staff to be in the building. But again, we're doing that survey as quickly as possible to get input. And, maybe we'll learn something that says this is completely not working and we need to revisit it. And maybe we'll learn something that says, most people like it and they appreciate the opportunity, but we want to allow staff to give us that feedback. Are there other questions for us?
I had a question about the technology, and it's related to one of the public comments, and then also one of the items that we'll be voting on in our consent agenda about increasing data to the hotspots. So I guess the public comment letter referenced like 8 hotspots, and then we'll be approving adding data for 500 hotspots. So I guess I just wanted to know how many hotspots we have. Are they roving hotspots? Are they in student houses? And then how do people access them?
And that was confusing when I heard it as well. And Mr. Duke, you might want to speak, but the 8 hotspots that we're referencing are in mobile hotspots that are in school buses that would go out to specific communities and be there to provide that wireless signal for our families. When we hear those larger numbers, those are hotspots that are actually being issued to individual students. And that goes back to the calls we mentioned last week as well, where we're asking teachers and other staff to reach out to students and their parents to see if they do need those mobile hotspots at home, and what supports do they have and what do they need to be successful in this virtual environment. So that's where you hear the difference. The 8 are just stationary. And what I heard in that comment was, there were like 30 neighborhoods that really are poverty areas that might need that, but we don't know how many students in those other 28, 29 neighborhoods actually have their own individual hotspots that have been issued. Mr. Duke, did I omit something there?
No, ma'am, that was perfect.
Okay.
And are all of the hotspots that we have, do they all get used, or do we have more than we have demand for? Or do we have more demand than we have hotspots?
We've got some on hand right now. We're working with the schools to try to figure out exactly how many are left, repair the ones that need repair, replace the ones that are missing, and get those reissued to students.
And just to follow up, we have asked our schools to provide information to us, to our families, to see who may need hotspots, and what areas of the community that may need, or making strategically put the buses. So we're getting that information out. We'll probably go out tomorrow to our schools, get that information to our families, and then we can better strategize for how many hotspots we need, and also where we can strategically put buses in the community.
And if I could add, Mr. Fisher, if that information was available by the 24th when we meet with the county and the housing authority, that could be some useful information.
Well, I gave them because it's going to take a little bit of time, I gave them to next Friday, the 21st, to have all that information in to us. So if we can compile all that, we may be able to have that on the 24th, Mr. Davis.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Gant. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. And for everyone that provided updates for us. We'll move forward with our agenda. Item 8, which are our policies that are to be posted for public comment for 4 weeks. Dr. Yeager, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gant. So some of these should look familiar to you. First, we have GAAA, which is an equal opportunity employment policy. As you might recall, this went up for public comment. There was a public comment about adding starting salaries to our language, and we had the conversation I discussed last week. We didn't add salary startings because those are set by experience, so we added this yellow, oops, too far, back up, that yellow phrase, objective experience assessment, to the change that we had already posted. Otherwise, we've approved all of the other changes already. If there's any comments or questions about this. Okay, hearing none, do we want to approve these individually or approve them in the whole thing? Okay, so the next one is GAM, which you also have seen before. The original goal of this policy was in response to Cognia to remove a sentence about BOE members freely communicating with employees of the district. So that wording is inconsistent with our other governance policies about how we are not supposed to handle things on our own. So we removed that sentence, but we did retain the very important sentence that in no way prevents or inhibits employees from contacting us. We've just removed the part about our contacting them. So there's been a lot of public discussion about this policy. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we are retaining the free or the ability of any employee to contact any board member. And then it's up to the board member to know what to do with it according to our training. Last time this went around, I think it was Dr. Knox recommended that we retain the sentence that we had previously deleted about no retaliation. We have other statements about no retaliation in other policies, but I'm happy to just leave that in. And so we put that sentence back in, and we'll now post it for more public comment. If there's any questions or comments about that, I'll move to the next.
Dr. Yeager.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have one question. I just want to be clear about something. That sentence that was taken out, that is not about us contacting people in the community. This is about us contacting staff, right?
Employees.
Employees, okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear because that has been confused. Some people have been confused with that in terms of how can we communicate with you all? They're taking our communication away, but I want to make sure that that was stated that this is about, because even when you just said it just now, it still sounded to me like you said but we can't communicate with them. So I want to make that clear that it means that the community can communicate with board members directly. However, we should direct them to the chain of command and support them, sending information to the superintendent, but we will not contact an individual employee without contacting the superintendent. I just think that should be clear of what this means.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for using that terminology. This chain of command is a little bit confusing, but it is the framework of all of the governance that we do, and it's been in every training I've taken. And so as board, but I wanted to make sure that it's the board members' responsibility to follow the chain of command. We can hear from anyone. Anyone can contact us, whether they're a teacher, a staff member, a community member. This policy makes it very clear that especially staff, teachers and staff can contact us freely. There is nothing in here that says they cannot contact us. It's up to us to know what to do with that information. And in most cases, we ask the person who's talking to us, have they worked up the chain of command? And if they have, and indeed some people have done this with me personally, and I can ask them, did you talk to the teacher? Did you talk to the principal? Did you talk to up the chain? And they've done that, and I then forward it to Dr. Thomas, so I think it's our job, and in our norms, we have these communication norms for what we're supposed to do with the information that we get. And that's going to be coming up soon, I think, as soon as the GSBA approves those norms of how we communicate. But this policy makes it totally free and open for anyone in the community or anyone in the, communities can do whatever they want. This is a policy for the employees saying
thank you.
They can contact us. of course, the community can contact us, but this is
Yes.
a policy about staff being free and not retaliated against for contacting board members.
Thank you. That's
So
what,
I hope that's clear to the community. It's got to go up for more public comment. So if it's not clear, we are certainly open to another round, but
thank
But
you.
I also think that, I mean, as we go through this policy, we're also, we're also letting the central office staff and everyone below them know also that this is the policy, because sometimes people have expressed, in fact, some of the emails that we received even tonight, I know I may be in jeopardy of this or that for expressing an opinion. I think it's very critical that that from the superintendent on down, because I know where Dr. Thomas is on this, but I think for the word to go all the way down that this is absolutely the policy of the Clark County School District not to be in any way retaliatory. And so I think we just can't say it enough, particularly in times like this.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, and I agree. You're exactly right, and I'm glad you know where I am on that. And it's interesting you said that if people see me looking over to my side, it's because I'm taking notes. And one of the things that I wrote down was fear of punishment, and I have consistently been hearing this theme about retaliation, fear of punishment, not being able to speak, and that's very concerning to me. And it does have to flow downward, and it's something that we will discuss at our next leadership team meeting, because I do want people to have to feel that they have the right to speak to you all, and that that's going to be then handled appropriately, but that they also understand the chain of command and also understand how we can work together to support each other. And I think that some of the places we have found ourselves have not been a result of, opinions and concerns and frustrations being presented in forums that are not necessarily healthy or productive, that sometimes can be counterproductive. And how do we develop trust and relationships in a way that if there is a problem or a concern, that we can go to the appropriate individuals and trust that those issues will be resolved appropriately, rather than airing them in ways that just add fodder, for lack of a better word, to the issue, and we still don't resolve the issue. And I think that's my biggest concern, because then what happens, everyone becomes so upset and defensive and frustrated that it spirals out of control, and the real issue gets lost in all of that. So my goal during my brief tenure is to consistently, has been and will be, that we are able to establish trusting relationships where we can address these issues. If they come to you, then they come to me, I will address those. If teachers have issues, those go to their building leaders, and they can trust that those are addressed. And I know we're not at that place now, so I will be working with Mr. Gaskins and our principal supervisors to see what we need to do to create a climate and culture of trust and collegiality, collaboration, and working together to address issues internally without feeling like that everything has to be an external issue where we lose focus on our priorities.
okay.
Can I just
Thank
ask or clarify one thing? The last part where it was taken out and maybe subject to disciplinary action by the Board of Education, I'm assuming we took that out because the Board of Education can't actually discipline
That is
staff.
correct. That is correct.
Okay.
So yeah, this policy we've written
Except
in-
on appeals or tribunals, right? That's when we would actually hear a complaint.
Yeah. Right.
But we wouldn't be able to, if we heard about retaliation, that wouldn't be our.
Not until it came to us on some type of an appeal. There would have to have been some other disciplinary action to trigger that, if I'm not mistaken. Is Mr. Pruitt still with us?
I'm here. Yes, ma'am. Was there a question?
Just that last statement where it talks about the board wouldn't take any disciplinary action. We don't. We only get appeals after disciplinary action that we would actually have any voice in.
That's correct. And that would be in the case of a written reprimand, loss of pay, or termination. Certified or contract staff have a right to appeal that to the board.
But we're removing that disciplinary action by the board because that's not our job. Yeah. So this policy was written in 1999 and last revised in 2002. And so the reason we were addressing this was in response to the Cognia report, again, trying to make sure our policies are consistent with law and good governance. And the reason we deleted that sentence was because it's inconsistent with good governance by the board members and what we are allowed to do in terms of calling up somebody in some building, asking about what's going on. We're just not supposed to do that. We're allowed to hear from them, but we are not allowed to pick up the phone ourselves and call a principal or call a teacher and say, what's going on down there? We're just not allowed to do that. That is not our role. Our role is to hear from you and pass it along to the appropriate person, or encourage you to pass it along to the appropriate person. So no one should feel that they cannot call us. In fact, I hope there's quite a few of you that feel perfectly free calling us, which is fine. And they should continue to do that. But what we cannot do as a board, this is about the board and what we do with the information appropriately according to good governance. So shall we move on? Or if there's any other questions, again, this will come up next month after it's received public comment. Okay, so GBC R1. So this is a regulation, which is an interesting that it's a reg, but okay, it's a reg. It talks about our minority recruitment plan, and this also went through us a month ago and 2 months ago, and then had public comment. The public comment was regarding how we had worded the sentence under number 2. We've revised the wording to be, I think it's just improved the language to be more clear about both recruiting teachers from institutions of higher learning, especially historically Black and other minority serving institutions or organizations. So we've just modified the text in response to the public comments. Any questions about that? So again, this will be posted for public comment. I hope the person who made the public comment will let us know if we did what we needed to do. Okay, GBRH and GBRH reg. So this is a case where a piece of the policy was stuck in the reg and we have cut it out and rescinded the reg and moved it into the policy. That's all we've done here. And yeah, the accumulation of sick leave part of the reg has been moved into the policy. Any questions about that? Okay, moving on. KBCA, we talked about this last week. This is a response to the group that was working on the communications norms, who bumped their head on this sentence that the board chairperson shall be the official spokesperson of the board. And the fact that the chairperson actually cannot speak for the board in that way unless we voted. So we've removed this because it's inconsistent with the norms, the communications norms. Did I say that right, Mr. Pruitt? Okay, thank you. Any questions about that? We talked about it last week. Okay, so this last one is BBC. Oops, sorry, John, did you have a comment?
Yeah, as much for anybody that's still watching as for me. So if the media wants a statement from the board, and that's the way they'll think of it, then their options are to talk to the superintendent or designee. Is that?
Well, so I thought you were working on the communications norms. I'm hoping that's in there. I think the point is that the board chair cannot represent the board if there hasn't been a vote. She doesn't speak, well, I mean, that's what I thought the norms were supposed to work on. did that policy get sent or that norm get sent off to GSBA for review, or when are we going to review it? Sorry, I'm off topic.
Oh, we only sent the ones that we've adopted.
Okay. So we'll see the communications norm sometime soon, I hope. I thought it was ready to go except for deleting this piece.
It's ready to go, but once we receive feedback from GSBA regarding the norms that we've already accepted, at that point, we'll move forward with whatever feedback that they have, and also try to identify a date that we just focus on norms outside of board meetings. So perhaps a special call board meeting to focus on several norms that may be ready.
Okay. Well, again, this one will go up for public comment. So if there's a way to fix it better, John, let me know, or whoever. Okay, moving on to BBC. So BBC was the discussion about the board committees, and in response to that Cognia directive that you heard about earlier tonight, which was making sure that our committees follow Open Meetings Act, which of course they have, but making it very clear in this policy that they will. The other thing we changed was moving it, the decision of when we make committees to January from December to accommodate the new board members. The only other thing I would note is we talked last week about the regulations approval sentence, which is in here somewhere under policy committee. I think somewhere there's a sentence that says the board approves the regulations. So as I mentioned before, I'd like to defer that discussion until after we have our meeting at the end of this month and have had a chance to go through the regulations versus policies. But I am willing to revisit that sentence after we do that.
Yeah, and I'm also interested, Dr. Yeager, about, I'm trying to wrap my mind around some of the conversation that I think has been had informally. I mean, if myself and Dr. Anderson and Mr. Gaskins, if we meet on policies dealing with academic policies, does that make us a committee of one? I mean, I just don't know how far. I mean, does that mean that's a public meeting? Because if I'm there, and I'm a committee of one active board member. I don't want to take this thing out too far, but it is a bit confusing to me.
These subcommittees you're describing are as official committees, but there's no quorum there. There's no action item to be done. It's a conversation you're having with a member-elect and a staff member. Right. So that doesn't seem like it needs to be open meetings, but I'm open to discussion. Mr. Pruitt, do you have a ruling on that or a thought on that?
Yes, ma'am. I have thought about that. So the Open Meetings Act says that any meeting of a governing authority, an agency is the word it uses, but the board in this case, a meeting of a quorum of the board or a meeting of a quorum of any committee created by the board is an open meeting. So it's subject to the Open Meetings Act. So we talked about these norms committees, and they are created by the board for all intents and purposes. This is, board members. It really doesn't matter if a committee is created by the board. It doesn't matter who is on that board. If you created a citizen committee that was composed 100% of non-board members, if the board creates it, it's still subject to the Open Meetings Act. So what you have here, Mr. Davis is talking about, is a committee that's not created by the board itself, but is created by the policy committee. So if a committee creates a subcommittee, is that subject to the Open Meetings Act? The law does not address that. So
okay.
I would leave it to your discretion, I suppose, as to what you think should be, how that should be interpreted.
So perhaps, Mr. Pruitt, would it be better to err on the side of caution?
Always.
But then we're having these 3-person discussions about these policies. So those would just be live on YouTube, announced 24 hours in advance at least, or a week in advance, and then live on YouTube. Is that what would have to take place to be air on caution?
It would be just like any other committee meeting that Ms. Palmer sets up for you, right?
Okay.
May I ask why a board member has to be there if this is like departmental committees that are looking at policies within their department? What?
No, this is the working together with the board. So the staff, the chief, whoever's doing the work is whatever they're doing behind the scenes with whoever they have on their team. They don't have to be a board meeting, but once they meet with the policy committee member and the new board member, member elect, they would probably have to be an open committee.
So what Ms. Davis is raising is the way it used to work, which is that staff and the board didn't designate which staff, didn't create a committee of staff. The board just expected staff to work this up and bring it to the policy committee for your consideration and input. That would be the way to avoid having, these multiple layers of open meetings.
So Mr. Harris created these subcommittees, not me. Is that what we're saying?
Well, nobody's creating subcommittees because there's no board committees. The board is simply asking staff, in this case, it's Mr. Harris's area, to bring you some recommendations. He would consult with whomever he needed to do that, and then bring it back to you.
Okay, what if Mr. Harris did the invite? What if he said, I would like to have one of the members of the policy committee available for this discussion?
Well, we're parsing it pretty fine now.
Yeah. I think maybe we just have to figure out how to make these public, just like everything else. I mean, it's not a problem. It's just another extra piece of work for poor Lisa. But, okay, we'll work on that one. I understand at least one of the meetings is scheduled, right, Mr. Harris? We have a date for one of them?
Yes, ma'am. Myself, Dr. Gant, Mr. Davis will meet on the 24th.
Okay, so we'll start that process with Lisa. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I think those are all of the policies for public review for 4 weeks. And so I'm going to open the floor for a motion that these policies be posted for public comment for 4 weeks.
I move.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, I heard Mr. Davis with the motion and Dr. Mattis with the second. Are there any more questions? Okay.
This is not about the policies, but we did say, just for clarification, we did say we're going to get to that conversation about regs after our policy training. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I just forgot for a minute. Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Dr. Thomas, I'm not sure if Dr. Thomas is back. Ms. Palmer or Mr. Gaskins, if you would take roll for us for all in favor of of those policies, 8.1 through 8.7 being posted for public review.
Okay, I'm gonna do my best. They'll probably be out of order.
That's okay.
I have them if you want me to. That's fine. Go ahead, Mr. Gaskins.
Okay. Mr. Worthy?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Knox?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
I believe that was everyone, Dr. Gant.
Yes.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Great job, Mr. Gaskins. I can retire in a year. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. So that motion passes. Those will be posted for public review. Dr. Yeager, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you for item 9. And these are the policies to be adopted or rescinded.
Okay, do we want to do these as a group again?
If possible, yes.
Okay.
We've already done that. We did that last week.
All right, we did talk through them last week. Okay, so the only issue is there was some public comment that came in on some of them, so I'll make sure I go through.
Yeah, I believe that I would like for it to be individual because which policy is that? GBRA, if that could be separate.
Okay, so we'll start with BH. That's the one that is our model code of ethics.
Vote on all of these.
Oops, I didn't quite hear you, Mr. Stevens. Could you say that again?
Well, I was just saying, I think that all of these should be voted on separately, in my view.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. So BH is the model code of ethics, which we have revised to be the same as the state law, or at least the model, except we have retained one word that was in our previous ethics policy, which is to that we will support all decisions. And also you now can count this as your annual ethics policy review. And I think what we will probably try to do is just print this out and put a signature line at the bottom and a date and have everybody sign it either electronically or in person. And then that'll count as our annual review. So can I have a motion on this policy? There was no public comment on this policy.
So moved.
Second.
So all in favor, can we just do an aye
Well.
with, oh no, we need to go around?
Aye.
Aye.
All.
If you don't mind, Dr. Yeager, Dr. Thomas, to remain consistent and just to be sure that we have as much accessibility as possible for people that may be listening or viewing.
Okay.
Dr. Thomas, if you could roll call for 9.1 for us.
Yes, Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. 9.2, Dr. Yeager?
Yeah, 9.2 is easy. It was a review only. GBP, there were no changes and no comments. So maybe we can do that one with GBRC and GBRCA, which also were review only with no comments.
I think that would be fine unless someone opposes that.
I so move.
Second.
Ready for me, Dr. Gant?
Were there any other questions about those three? That was a motion for 9.2, 9.3, and 9. No?
No, not 9.3. Sorry, it's 9.2,
9.5.
9.5, and 9.6, which were review only, no comments.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other questions about that? Okay, Dr. Thomas?
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Yeager?
Okay, so GBRA, which we were going to rescind because it talks about fitness for duty and our ability to fire employees for being quote unquote unfit for duty. Now this received quite a bit of comments, or a few comments, concerned about removing a health policy during a pandemic. My understanding of the reason that we are rescinding this is because it's redundant with other policies. Mr. Pruitt, given the comments, would you be willing to step up and if he's still there?
Sure, I'm here.
And say why this one was recommended to rescind because of the language that was there.
Right. So regardless of the heading, the only content in this policy is about fitness for duty examinations in the very narrow category of when an employee is suspected of having a mental health issue. So, I mean, we're fine on health policies in other places. This is just a counterproductive one to have. It's misleading. It has some at least incomplete statements of law, perhaps incorrect statements of law. Under the ADA, you have to be very careful with singling out employees because you think they have mental health issues. It's basically limited to situations where and you have reasonable belief that an employee may be a danger to themselves or others. Also in that situation, fitness for duty is not even the correct term. That's more of an FMLA term. So this is really just a hodgepodge that's more harm than good.
So I guess what I would like to do is I have two options. One is that, well, one thing that I will promise is that we're going to revisit the infectious diseases policy. I forget which number it is in our next policy meeting. We put it on the agenda so that we make sure to make that our infectious disease policy is up to date with the COVID concerns of the staff and parents and students. So I guess the other thing that I want to do is this, one of these comments talks about they don't know why we're striking this policy. And I noticed that even though when we're in policy committee, we have your legal report in our header, that header seems to disappear when it makes it into board docs for the meeting. So where it says summary of proposed action indicate why action is necessary, and then there's just a double, a dashed line. There's no input. So I think perhaps to address some of the comments that we're getting from the community, we need to make sure that we put that sentence in. Like what you just said was very clear, to me at least, about why we're rescinding this policy. And that's not in board docs when we put it up for people to look at. So maybe we could try to, Mr. Harris or Ms. Tillman, maybe we could try to do that a little better job. Is once it leaves policy committee, it takes that logic with it so people can see what the point is or what we're trying to do with the policy changes. Would that be okay with everyone?
Will we then file that with this policy, or because
no, it would
I'm accustomed to.
It would just be in that little paragraph that says some in board docs saying summary of proposed action indicate why.
Okay, and it would stay with the policy?
No, not necessarily. It would just stay with the policy as long as it was being reviewed.
Okay.
Until it was adopted or rescinded.
Yeah, it's just explaining to the public that we didn't just come up one day and say this is a bad policy because I felt like it, that there was some legal implication for it.
Yeah, because that's what we see in the policy committee is we see the legal memo saying why we should do whatever with whatever policy. So
I was accustomed to seeing that in, as one memo with everything on it, not in individual policies, but that makes more sense. I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That's really what I wanted.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so I think we've addressed the three comments. I hope. And as I mentioned, we will revisit the infectious disease policy next week. So they'll see that at the next work session. Okay. So may I, any other further comments or questions about this one?
One more thing. So will that memo be added soon for the public to see that in regards to this policy?
Well, this one's about to be adopted or rescinded, so it will disappear off the books. This one will, but I can point them to at our next policy meeting. I'll point them to the infectious disease policy.
And Mike's explanation will stay forever in the ozone.
Okay.
Let me just remind y'all that when I'm communicating directly with you on these things, that is attorney-client. Whether you want to make it available to the public is totally up to you. That's fine. That's a board decision.
Okay, so that's why it disappears. It's because it goes public. I get it. Okay. So we can choose to put a sentence in the policy as it moves through into public domain about our explanation about why. It may or may not be the legal explanation. It will just be the policy committee explanation.
Which Dr. Yeager may need a vote. I'm just
To add that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's what Mike is suggesting.
From the policy committee. Yeah.
Well, you're actually right. Well, I suppose I'm only sending my memo to the policy committee, but the client is the Clark County School District. You're the governing authority. Mr. Davis is right. I mean, technically, it's the full board that needs to make any decisions on waiving attorney-client privilege. And again, I don't have a problem. I mean, there's nothing that's sensitive about this, and I understand you wanting to do it, but yeah, it does need to be a full board decision.
Okay, so we'll try to put that on the next board meeting agenda, perhaps? And the policy committee report maybe? Okay, I'll get Dr. Gant's advice on that.
Because even when we, yeah, I think that would be appropriate, because even when we look at that next policy with the infectious disease, I think even then we'll still have to go out for public.
Oh yeah.
So it'll still be some time. We'll have some time.
Yeah, but I think in general, it's a good idea for us to find a way to insert the reason that we're putting this I mean, because there's going to be a lot of them coming through in the next few months. We probably should have a little sentence that says we're doing this because, or we're not doing anything with this thing because, so that you all have a record of what the decision is as we push it through.
So what is this statement, summary of proposed action?
I don't know. This is what's in the doc.
Okay, what I understand it to be, Linda, is that the board is saying that when we vote to alter that, eliminate policy, that when we post it for public comment, that the legal opinion that we received as a policy committee accompanies that particular change or non-change or elimination.
So in my years on the policy committee, that's what was in this summary of proposed action, the explanation of why we were looking at this. And it had a simple statement. Sometimes it simply said it's updating because of the age of it. Sometimes it gave the rationale. And so I'm just asking, we have summary of proposed action. Is that a function of board docs?
I believe so. I think so.
Okay, and so that is where we would put the explanation about why we're taking this particular action.
I think so.
In addition to the rescission of an existing policy. So that would just be a paraphrase of what we got from Mike, I would think, in that particular spot.
Or what we decided as a board. It could be any explanation for why we're doing what we're doing, I think. It doesn't have to be just the legal, but you're right.
But there is historical evidence here that it was done that way. And so I guess I'm just asking why this doesn't seem to be one of those big deal kind of things for me, but I'm just at the place.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just pointed out to us, the person who public commented says, I can't tell why you are striking a policy. Is it possible to provide context about the why when you post these comments? So at least we can see what the board believes is being gained. And that's a completely legitimate and very good idea that we should be putting that information into
I agree. But doesn't it belong right there in that space where it says summary of proposed action?
It absolutely does. And I don't know why it's not there because I'm new at this job.
I don't remember it being there, Linda.
It's okay that you don't remember. We definitely have different memories of things, so I'm okay with that. But I'm just saying that space is there. Why wouldn't we use that space?
I think we should use that space. That's my proposal. So
I agree.
Well, while we figure, I think we can figure that out, like, maybe a little bit later.
Yeah, at the next policy committee.
Yeah, it sounds like people are generally supportive of that, and we can decide, talk more if it needs to be more formal action. But I am going to open the floor for a motion if there are no additional comments and questions.
I move that the policy be rescinded.
I second.
Any more comments and questions? All right, Dr. Thomas, if you would conduct roll call for us.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens? Mr.
Yes.
Stevens? Okay, Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving forward, Dr. Yeager, which policy does that put you at?
I think we're at GBQ.
Okay.
Hang on, let me pull it up. GBQ is the retirement policy, which is completely out of date and not necessary.
I open the floor for a motion.
And there were no public comments on this one.
Move that we vote on 9.4 rescission.
Mr. Davis has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. And Dr. Yeager, you did say there are no public comments, right?
There were no public comments on this one.
Any other questions or discussion around GBQ? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us for all in favor of rescinding GBQ.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you. So that policy is rescinded. And Dr. Yeager?
So the final one is GBRL, which is the dress code, which we worked hard on to try to make better. And we still have 2 public comments. And so we only got these public comments today or yesterday, I believe, or maybe Monday. So I have not addressed these in any changes in the policy at all. The public comments are asking who is the person, who's the arbiter of whether something is offensive. And then there's also a comment about almost anything can cause a disruption in school. Instead of the clothing being the problem, maybe it should be the person causing the disruption as the issue. So that one is more about not judging the clothes, but judging the person. So I'm not quite sure what to do with these comments. So I would open it up for brief discussion by the board about whether we want to kick this back to policy or what you guys want to do.
I wish it not to be come back to policy.
So let me look at let me read the policy again briefly. It's now loaded up. So the policy had been revised to say no. So we made sure the sentence, any such dress code will not be applied in a manner that is discriminatory on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, pregnancy, age, religion, or disability. And then we changed words like decency and decorum to be professional. Down below is where it says the employee's clothing and appearance must not be a distraction, immodest, inflammatory, offensive, or pose a health, safety, or security hazard. And then that's the next sentence is anything else which is offensive, lewd, profane, or sexually suggestive. So you want to take away the word offensive?
No, I mean, I think the decision is made with the building leadership, and I don't know, there's
That's
no.
number 4.
So I don't.
Right. The superintendent, principal, and administrators have the authority to interpret this dress code and make a case-by-case determination of the appropriateness of dress and appearance in cases that may not be covered. So are you saying, yeah, so Mr. Davis, you say we should just let this go and push it through?
Yes, I do.
Or as an alternative, take out everything except number 4 and let it go. I mean, I would go see, what is it? General criteria and drop down to number 4.
No, I think people deserve an explanation as to what to expect when they start working in a school district, in Clark County School District. And I think it's fairly specific, and I think it's helpful. If I were going to be hired in Clark County, I would read this and say, okay, I get it.
Well, so the question of who's the arbiter of offensive, we can answer with that is the superintendent, principal, or site administrator, right? So that's answering that comments question that's in the policy. The other question about any article of clothing or manner of dress which causes or has the potential to cause a disruption in school. So again, I think that's sort of up to the, like you said, the building supervisor or the principal, the site administrator, excuse me, principal or superintendent, ultimately.
Right. And then if it's outside constitutional law, supposedly it could go to the ACLU.
Well, we do have a free speech clause in our other policies, so it cannot be political speech that we discriminate against. Unless it's disruptive, I guess, and interfering with education, maybe. Well, okay, so I guess we have to just vote whether you want to kick this back to policy or let it move forward.
Sure. So I'll open up the floor for a motion.
A motion that it go forward.
Second.
Mr. Davis, your motion is for 9.7, the employee dress code revision to be adopted, and Mr. Worthy was a second. Then I'll open the floor for any more questions.
I have a question about, again, the specificity when we came down to the general criteria. But it sounds like we're comfortable with doing that, and I guess, yeah, I don't know. We get into that whole interpretation thing in A, B, C, and D and E, and then it ultimately ends up in the number 4. So I'm not sure.
So Linda, that would suggest you want to put it back in the policy committee to have that discussion. We don't want to do that here.
Okay, I'm good with that. But okay, then I'll vote no, and when we get to that point.
And I'd like the motion for this to go back to policy.
Motion already been made.
Is that a substitute motion that I'm hearing?
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, is there a second on Mr. Stevens' substitute motion?
I second.
Okay. Any further discussion and questions? Okay. Dr. Tom, I'm sorry, did I miss someone?
Back to policy committee. I just want to make sure I know what the policy committee is going to work on then. Is it the part about the specifics under number 2, because offensive is subjective, and that kind of thing? Is that the wording that?
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Dr. Thomas, would you take roll for the substitute motion for this to go back to policy committee?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
No.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Mr. Worthy?
No.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
Dr. Knox?
Yes.
And Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
7-2.
Looks like that motion carries for this to go, GBRL to go back to policy. All right, moving forward with personnel recommendations. Dr. Thomas, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Yes, ma'am. It would be my recommendation, if it is the will of the group, that since we discussed these last week, that we could approve items 10.1 through 10.5.
I so move.
Second.
Ms. Davis made a motion to approve the recommendations of Dr. Thomas. Mr. Worthy seconded it. Any questions? Okay. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So those items personnel recommendations have been approved by the board. Moving forward with item number 11, which are all of our consent agenda items. Going to open the floor for a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Okay. Mr. Worthy made a motion to approve our consent agenda. Mr. Davis made a second. I haven't seen any changes since last week. Dr. Thomas, if you would call roll for us.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our consent agenda has been approved. Moving forward to item number 12, and we'll take 12.1 first, and that's the action to approve change order number 1 for the Cedar Shoals track project. Dr. Thomas, I know that you shared with us the answers to questions that had been asked, I think by Ms. Davis. Was
Yes,
there any additional information or discussion points around this item?
Mr. Gilbreath, do you have any additional information to share?
No, not if there's any other questions.
Ms. Davis, did you have any follow-up or need any additional information, or anyone else?
I didn't have any, no follow-up, but under performance objective A, I'm just trying to understand, where does that match? I was just trying to fit this into, is that the strategic plan for a particular initiative on our strategic plan? What does the performance objective A refer to?
Yeah, it's from the strategic plan. Initially, when we were filling out the board docs, on the objectives, we were choosing from those, and this best suits that this item.
I don't know which strategy though that it fits under, so maybe that's an off. I can take that comment offline. That was my only question I had left. Thank you for a very thorough response. And it's not that I didn't read your explanation on this document. It's just that the explanation triggered more questions for me. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I see it now, priority number 4, fiscal health. I'm so sorry. There it is right in front of me. Okay.
All right, I'm going to open the floor for a motion to take action, approve item 12.1.
I move that we accept 12.1 for a vote.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Davis made a motion to accept this change order, and Mr. Worthy second. Just for the record, is there any more discussion or questions? Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us.
Ma'am, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Mr. Worthy,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Knox,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion carries. Action to approve the change order. Moving forward to item 12.2. And this is the action to approve the purchase of Newzella Incorporated Mr. Gaskins, was there any additional information that you wanted to provide, or Dr. Thomas, I should say?
You were right, Mr. Gaskins. And I guess, is there any additional information? He has some information prepared, and we'll see if Ms. Davis has additional questions.
So I would just
Go right
say
ahead.
that hopefully the board update answered any questions that you have. I will say that our digital learning teachers are eager to know the outcome of Newsella so they can consider the planning of those lessons. This would be a resource they would use.
Thank you for that update, and I really appreciated getting the information from you earlier. I have spent a good bit of time with Newsella since then, and it leans my way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Other questions, information?
I've got one for Mr. Gaskins. Just, in terms of vetting this, what's your process?
My process for vetting what we bring towards the board. Is that your question, Mr. Davis?
In terms of selecting this product, yes, just real briefly.
So it's really in a couple of ways. Teachers or principals usually recommend things to me that they are purchasing as a school to see if we can purchase it as a district. In the case with Newsella, when we had the shutdown, Newsella was one of the vendors that provided their subscription to us for free. So a lot of our teachers had an opportunity to use it. A lot of our schools were already using it. And so a member of my team, Ben Smalley, who was our coordinator of social studies, came to me and said, Brandon, this is something that our social studies teachers really want to continue to use. Can we purchase it? And as I looked at the materials, I realized that there was also science, there was also reading, there was also SEL, and it just made sense to purchase all of those so our teachers would have the advantage of it. So it really comes out of a teacher need or a principal recommending to me that this is something that they're using as a school that we think would benefit the entire district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaskins. Mr. Davis, are there other questions?
Has his hand up.
Dr. Knox?
Yes, this kind of goes back to some of the things I was asking last time. So there's still a free version, as I understand it. What components of the use in the classroom of Newsella couldn't be accessed through the free version?
So the free version, and that's a great question, Dr. Knotts, because I did look into that as well. The free version just doesn't provide as many articles. It's very limited. Was available, and I think the research I compiled was back in 2018, 2019. A lot of their articles were free, but as they have increased the number of articles that are available, they've decreased the volume that are free. So there's a class that has multiple reading levels or multiple Lexile levels, the same content. So if you are a middle school teacher and you have students that are advanced readers or students that are 2 or more grade levels behind in their reading, they can still access the same content, but at their appropriate reading level. So students are not missing content because they may be a reader that is struggling.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us for all it. Well, I'm sorry, no, I need
a motion.
Motion.
I move to approve.
Dr. Yeager made the motion, and was that Ms. Davis?
Yes, I second.
Okay, any other questions or discussion for the record? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Mr. Worthy?
Yes.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
Dr. Noddick, I'm sorry, Dr. Noddick, Dr. Knox,
Yes.
okay, and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you. We are, so that motion carries. We're at our last item, which is adjournment. I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
So moved.
So move.
Second.
Okay, I heard a lot of voices, but I don't heard
I think Dr. Maddox.
Give it
got
to Linda.
Maddox.
Always give it to Linda.
Dr. Maddox, and was that Ms. Davis for the second?
Yes.
Seeing that there are no objections, all in favor, if you would say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Same sign. Okay.
Stay safe.
We are adjourned at 9:46. Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you.
team and
Thank
board
you,
members.
everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good evening.